I was in Oregon on the Pacific Crest Trail, and my butt was itching me so badly that I would remember just taking minutes to scratch at my butt, and it would feel so good when I would scratch. And I would be like,
no, I've had the repetitive scratch before, to the point where your finger smells through 2 layers of fabric, kind of a scratch.
Yeah. Why are you smelling it after?
Because you've been touching your asshole. You're like, is my hand safe? It's not. It's not safe.
It definitely has poo on it. Through your shorts.
It went through underwear and shorts and is now part of my hand. Welcome to Backpacker Radio, presented by The Trek. I am your co-host, Zach Badger Davis. Sitting to my right is...
I am Juliana Chauncey, a.k.a. Chaunce.
Reminders. Got a few of them. This is the last podcast that's coming out before our amazing live podcast in Denver, December 7th, featuring Kyle Hates Hiking, Kyle O'Grady. He's going to do a brand new trail mystery on the live podcast. If we get to our donation threshold, Viking's going to shave his beard at the live podcast. Mm-hmm. I should mention, as of this recording, it's looking iffy.
We're about halfway. We had some really strong momentum in the beginning, and it has tapered off a little bit, which does make sense based on just hype. However, I mean, it's all for a good cause, no matter what, even if we come up short.
Yes.
But we cannot just miss him shaving his beard.
Right. Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you want to see Jabba's baby face, mm-hmm. And you've got a couple of extra bucks to kick in.
$5.
Yeah. Any amount of money is definitely appreciated. Mm-hmm. But I feel like we're so close that we have to get there. I'm going to be personally very disappointed if I don't get to see Jabba without a beard.
And it's for a good cause, because a lot of the areas that were hit by Hurricane Helene, realistically still look like a war zone. And I feel like the media and news outlets and all that stuff have kind of moved on.
Yeah.
And that's old news, but it's still very much a present thing for them.
Totally.
So your donations still do matter. They are very helpful to everything that's going on with Feed the Carolinas, and I'm sure they will be greatly appreciated by the people that are impacted by them. So if you have $5 to spare, it's for a good cause. It's not for us.
Yeah. And worth mentioning, this nonprofit was in place prior to Hurricane Helene as well. Food insecurity is an issue everywhere at all times. So definitely will get good use regardless of what is happening. But yes, I know obviously food insecurity is still an issue in the Carolinas due to Hurricane Helene. And then following the live podcast, obviously we're doing our annual hiker holiday meetup. That's going to be awesome. That happens immediately following the podcast, so can't give you an exact time for that. But why don't you just come to the podcast, watch a beard get shaved, then hang out for the holiday meetup. It's just going to be an epic night. It's going to be a long, epic night. Mm-hmm. And the Skylark Lounge is an amazing place. We went back to that for a reason. Renovated by Nathaniel Rateliff.
Yeah, that was such a cool fact. Singer, does folky type songs.
I realize now that that's a household name for us.
What's play one of his songs.
Everybody has heard this song.
Yeah.
I love that we're going to get a copyright strike promoting his
maybe
venue.
Maybe we should have fast forwarded a bit.
Yeah, whatever.
But so he's that guy. And now we're doing podcasts. Right. We should open the podcast with that song.
Sure.
To welcome people to his abode. We should invite him.
We'll just help ourselves do it.
Should we invite him?
He probably already has the invite, seeing that I think he's the owner.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little more heartfelt.
Yeah, sure.
Direct.
But as of this recording, we still do have tickets for the live podcast. So if you want to go, jump on those, because there's a decent chance that those will sell out. Don't wait. Get them.
Yeah, that's not just a gimmicky thing. We have a limited number of seats, as in there is a limited number of chairs available. So you want to be able to have a chair.
And according to a quick Google search, the capacity of this place is actually smaller than I was expecting.
Huh.
Yeah, so if that is the real number, then I think there's a decent chance that we do sell out.
Mm-hmm.
If you're taking on a long-distance backpacking trip in 2025 and want your journey featured on a large and amazing platform, we are currently accepting applications for you to blog at The Trek. We just onboarded a new community marketing manager. I know I've shouted out Jess many times. I'm going to continue to do so because she's going to make the program better than it's ever been. But we've got a lot of fun stuff in store for this, including I'm going to fly out one of our top bloggers to be a guest here on the podcast toward the end of next year. We've got some new gear discounts, got some mail drops in the works. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff happening for the blogger platform for 2025. Last but not least, if you enjoy Backpacker Radio and you want some additional bonus content and or you just want to support us, head on over to patreon.com/backpackerradio and you can do so for as little as $5 per month. I think there's even a cheaper option if you pay for like the annual subscription. Discounts. But yeah, what's some recent fun Patreon content? We did some Patreon content with Katie Jackson.
Yep, we did Katie Jackson, and then we also had Tara Dower on, and she gave me advice for running a marathon with no prep. And I don't know if you saw this online, Zach, but there is a viral reel going around right now of a girl who decided to do a marathon with no prep, and it went viral like a week after mine. And I'm watching it like, wow, did I miss my big break? Should I have capitalized on this more? But I guess this is like an in thing to do right now, is to just raw dog a marathon.
Yeah. The first marathon I ran was fairly raw dog. I prepared for like legitimately 3 weeks, which I guess was 3 weeks more than you.
Yeah.
But I think most people are pretty haphazard with it. Because if you look at the training program for a marathon, it sucks.
Yeah.
You have to run so much.
Yeah. So I didn't
Why not just run once?
Right. Well, it's in. Marathons are in.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get to the headline event. The one, the only, Andrew and Amanda Skirka. We are joined by today's guests. I'm going to start with Andrew because that's the bio that Rachel prepared for us. Andrew Skirka is Backpacker Radio's most frequent guest, if you don't count Jabba, which we don't. While you probably know Andrew as the dirty hand man and promoter of the Backcountry Bidet, he actually is also a renowned hiker, adventurer, author, runner, and entrepreneur. And he's joined by his lovely wife, Amanda. Can you believe that bio? Can you believe Rachel would do that to you?
Can you read the red
I didn't know
print?
that I had a nickname of the Dirty Hand Man. That's hysterical. So when I was registering, I bought my transit van for the guided trip program in it was like the end of 2020, and I had to go get it registered. And I wanted vanity plates for it, which I had never done before with any car. And my first choice was BNZRICE, and I ended up getting that one, but they make you list like some alternates in case they kind of look into it and they're like, no, that's like either taken or it's inappropriate. So my second choice was BC Bidet.
And that one was available?
I don't know. That was the alternate. So
Gotcha.
Beans and Rice was available.
Yeah. It's like domain names. That's a hot ticket. Okay, where do we start? I want to go with this one because this is newsworthy. By the time this comes out, maybe not, but that's how time works. So I think pretty big news in the backpacking world is it My Outdoor Life? Is that the channel? Put out a video that, according to his tests, that PFAS was leaching from Gore-Tex. Do you have any takes on that?
Well, I love that he had a way to test for PFAS like in his own home.
Yeah.
And that he's like smart enough to know how to do it. But then he also did a bunch of testing and like some, part of the ocean looked like maybe California coast, and they're definitely up in the Wind River Range was kind of the other area that he seemed to go. Yeah, so this is a big problem in the outdoor industry. Yeah.
Can we take a quick step back and say what PFAS is and just give some context for the less gear inclined of us?
Yeah, I hadn't prepared that part.
I can't. So the PFAS, this is that family of forever chemicals that the EPA recently has said, like, no amount of these is okay. Like, there's no, like, tolerance for, like, how much of it can be in water or, like, anything. So it's going to have to get banned from all, like, industrial, commercial uses.
And California is already doing that, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are some companies. I was listening to an interesting podcast. It was I think it was Keen Footwear. They were trying to get rid of all the PFAS from their products, and they were talking about how difficult it was because the PFAS would turn up in really unexpected places. Like, they had specifically used a bunch of materials that were PFAS free, but then they found that like the machine that was putting all of their products in bags had PFAS on it or something like that. Yeah, so it's really tough.
Yeah. I know I've seen that, like, any clothing that's marketed as being stain resistant likely has PFAS in it. Like, it's more than just Gore-Tex, obviously. Like, there's a ton of products that use PFAS.
Yeah, it's like Teflon.
Yeah.
What does it stand for? Do you know? Not to quiz you.
I can look it up and still
I
be able
did,
to pronounce it.
not major in chemistry.
Yeah, polyfluoroalkyl substances.
Okay, see, I was thinking plastic, something with an F, something with an A, something with an F.
Yeah, no.
Poly and plastic, pretty much the same
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Interesting.
So right, so this is on waterproof breathable outerwear. It's included. It's both in the durable water repellent exterior finish. So that actually means that it could be on products that are marketed as water resistant, not just waterproof. And then it's in the membrane, like the waterproof breathable membrane too. So I'm not sure. I don't work with outdoor brands anymore, so I'm not sure what the alternatives are. But probably my guess is that, like when the last time I was working with brands, like the big issue they were having at the time was they were trying to start using C6 treatments rather than C8, like carbonate, because the carbonate was better, but then the six was like okay, but at least it wasn't as bad. That's kind of what the thinking was. So I'm not sure what it means that they're all going to have to get taken away. My guess is that probably the quality of waterproof breathable outerwear will go down.
And you famously
Yeah,
have not
which
been a
is
fan of it
like-
to begin with.
Yeah, so I don't know how they will be able to keep the hang tag that it's guaranteed to keep you dry.
Yeah.
Is this just on things that we wear, or is it also on things like tents?
Tents typically wouldn't have that kind of treatment on it.
Okay.
Yeah, because tent fabrics are going to be like conventional tent fabrics are going to be silicone or polyurethane coated. Cuban DCF is a little bit different.
Got it. Whenever I hear the gear stuff, it doesn't retain well, so I feel like I just always have to ask the
Yeah.
dumb questions again.
Well,
And I'll leave here remembering and
Yeah.
knowing really well,
Yeah.
and then the next time I see you, I won't again.
Yeah.
So
So
is this-
I'm not sure I don't know where things are going to go because, as this stuff gets removed, some of these PFAS-free alternatives might be just fine. You might not notice a difference, or you might be left thinking that waterproof breathable outerwear is even more of a hoax than it used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know obviously it's not news that PFAS is bad, but I think what made news with this video is that it was actually leaching from the
Yeah.
Gore-Tex, where they marketed it as like, no, that doesn't happen at all.
Yeah, they describe it as we use a very stable version of it.
Yeah.
and that video, the guy's like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to speculate, but that feels like maybe class action lawsuit type of. I'm not a lawyer.
Not a lawyer.
No one sue me. So is that a vote for something like Frog Togs then? For somebody that wants to have rain gear?
I'm not sure if Frog Togs is. I can't remember exactly what the material that they use and whether they're going to be in trouble either with that. I think it would be more of a vote for like a waterproof poncho, or an umbrella, or the Paca, something of that variety.
Yeah. I guess
Or you could go with like the Fjallraven, like wax coated, but.
or trash bag.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
All right. I did put a call out for questions on Instagram, both through Backpacker Radio and my personal Instagram. Here's a few of them. This is one that you've written about before. I think we probably talked about this likely during your first trip, but that was 2017. It's been a long time. You've been, like Rachel mentioned.
How many times have I come on?
This is the
show?
fifth
It's number
attempt.
5?
Yeah.
This is usually like an annual, like November, December. I always feel like I pull in a golden and it's dark and kind of snowy.
Yeah. We're getting ready to promote the next season of guiding trips. So
Yeah. It's like when I'm around.
Right. So Deadpool _AZT_2025.
He's the one that gave you the chocolate-covered Oreos.
Oh, no shit.
Mm-hmm.
Deadpool, my guy. Do you sleep with your food?
Sometimes. Yeah, that would be like sometimes would be the right answer, and then so if I want to delve into the like the context or like the specific circumstances. So if like in places like the High Sierra, like the bear canister regulations there are just so crystal clear. So Yosemite, Sequoia Kings, we have bear canisters. Don't bother sleeping with it. Interestingly, they did update their sort of the recommendations about where to put bear canisters. So it used to be the case that you would kind of put it like pretty far from camp, because they didn't. The rangers, the kind of thinking was that leave it far away from camp, and then if a bear does start playing soccer with it at night, at least you won't be like, it's also not going to stumble into your camp. But what they're finding though is that if you give these bears long enough, sometimes they can get them open, or they'll like push them off a cliff. There was actually this famous bear. It like, so it was a sow, and it taught some of its cubs too, and it would spend the spring in Snow Creek, which is like above on the north side of Yosemite Valley. And the incident reports were so funny because, like, they would read like May 16th, 2 campers camped at Snow Creek, woke up in the morning, reported having both of their bear canisters missing, walked down to the creek and found one of them. And then be like May 17th, camper at Snow Creek reported hearing a bear messing around with their bear canister in the middle of the night, heard a loud crash, and in the morning found the bear canister at the bottom of the cliff, having exploded like a piñata. And then like May 18th, campers at Snow Creek woke up in the morning missing their bear canisters, went down to the creek, found one, but it was not theirs. Like, so it's just so the recommendation nowadays, they just say like, put it like, within eyesight, like, maybe 30 feet away, 30, 40 feet away, so you can kind of see it. And if the bear comes in the middle of the night, then you can try to chase it away.
Yeah. Is that the recommendation in both black bear and grizzly territory?
Grizzly's totally different.
Okay.
Yeah. So in grizzly bear, it really depends on where you are, even within like, so if you're dealing with grizzly bears, but like, where are you specifically? So in a place like Yellowstone, they have bear poles almost at every single campsite. So you can just hang your food like you normally, like we used to do back in the 80s, and it works. The fact that the bear hangs are not that sophisticated. Like there's usually pretty difficult to get some like perfect tree scenario where it's, what is it, 10 feet off the ground, 4 or 5 feet away from a tree. Like, it can be pretty difficult to do that. So that suggests to me that they're not having bear issues in Yellowstone. Yeah. The places where I will sleep with my food are in places where I'm basically where bear canisters aren't required, and I'm not hearing reports of bears coming to camps. Yeah.
So I think this is the subject that we touched on precisely on your first visit, I think. But for something like the Appalachian Trail, where bear activity is common, black bears explicitly, but a lot of different moving pieces.
I think that probably the Appalachian Trail Conservancy should probably just say bear canisters are universally required on the Appalachian Trail. I think that would, because it's not the thing about bear canisters, in addition to them being bear proof, almost the nicer thing about them is that they're rodent proof. And the Appalachian Trail, like, the rodents are your problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think every AT hiker's had the experience of
yeah,
mouse trying to chew through their tent.
Totally. Yeah, or running over you in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one is from Hikes and Cakes, all the major food groups. What was, or how was the first trip out of Yellowstone?
Our Yellowstone trips this year overall went pretty well. Yeah, I came away pretty delighted with how they'd gone. Whenever we start a new location, I always expect like something to kind of not be quite right. So like in my case, in this year it was my 7-day trip. The itinerary was just it was just too ambitious for the group that I had. And like without putting a group into the field and kind of seeing how they react to certain terrain, it's really difficult to know if that's going to be the case or not. Like it's one thing for you to go up there and do the route yourself and figure it all out, but it's another thing to put a group in the field.
Yeah.
So it worked fine. Like we ended up just finishing at a different trailhead and taking a shuttle back to our cars.
Yeah. Are groups excited to be the pioneering group and be the ones field testing this? Or
we're honest if it's a new location.
Yeah.
And like I think even the website last year said like this will be our first year in Yellowstone. Like, maybe like be flexible with us if things like aren't quite perfect.
Yeah.
Or like other locations that we've been doing for years, and we've been in the High Sierra for over a decade. We've been going up to the Brooks Range since 2018 or 2019. So like we have these locations like Grand Staircase Escalante. We've been in there for a decade, so we have those areas like pretty buttoned up. We know generally like where we like to go. We kind of know all like the cool things to do. We know where all the water is.
So for 2025, are you going to alter the route or require a higher level of fitness for the trip?
Oh, that 7-day group? Yeah. So that's actually listed as one of our, this year we're doing, so we have a short list of signature trips, and that's going to be one of them. Yeah. So I need like in our program, we, all the applicants we rate 1 through 5 on their fitness. So it goes from basic, moderate, median, high, and ultra. And we are welcoming of all fitness levels, but what we do like to do is take applicants of similar abilities and pair them together.
Yeah.
Works a lot better for the groups. So yeah, for that trip I need like high or ultra.
Do you require them to like run a mile so you can get an idea of their fitness, or are they self-reporting their level of fitness?
The best indication of fitness is going to be past backpacking trips.
Uh-huh.
So tell us, like on a sustainable basis, how many miles per day do you hike, and how many vertical feet do you climb? That's like the best indication. When people don't have that data, then we start looking at things like, we look at age, and we look at where they're from. We look at what they do on a weekly basis for fitness. We look at how they describe their own fitness relative to their peers. We look at BMI.
If somebody's interested in one of these trips, how long does it take to fill out the questionnaire?
It's pretty thorough. Probably like 15 minutes.
15. Okay.
Yeah. And if they wanted to prep themselves ahead of time to know what to expect, there's a little PDF of it they can look at.
Yeah.
Have you ever gotten someone that once you get to a trip, you're like, damn, that person lied on their resume?
Yeah. Yeah, in both directions. Yeah, and I'll throw like one gender under the bus here. If it's more likely that if a client has overstated their abilities, that it's going to be a male.
Yeah.
And it's more likely that if a client understated their abilities, that it's going to be a female.
I would have loved if you just threw women under the bus. This would have been such a good trajectory.
We're going to be lying all the time.
I'm going to throw one gender under the bus. These women are liars.
Yeah, and I don't know where that comes from. I don't know if it's like, males believe they can do more, or they're just more confident, or I don't know. But that's tends to be the way it is. But we have to be very good at reviewing applications. I mean, last year, Katie, so she was in charge of reviewing all the applications. She reviewed, 450 applications.
For how many slots?
For the season.
Yeah, but how many openings do you actually have for?
So last year we ran 50 trips with 350 clients.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's 100 people that don't.
For one reason or another. I mean, they might apply and then they have to cancel, or they apply and then we offer them a spot and they're like, actually, those dates don't work for me anymore.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. But the crazy thing is that if we're wrong 1 out of 8 times, that gets tough. Because we do, what we want, the ideal situation is that every group walks at about the same speed, takes breaks at around the same length, has a similar tolerance for risk. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's usually what we get. But if we're wrong 1 out of 8 times, ideally they're stronger than the group, in which case they can just maybe settle in a little bit and get on the group train.
Yeah.
But if they're slower, and that's tough because we put someone in a situation where they probably feel bad that they're holding everybody up.
What's the question in the questionnaire about their risk tolerance?
So we also, in addition to the fitness levels, we ask for some information on technical comfort. So what, are you comfortable with heights? Uncomfortable? Very uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Have you done any scrambling before? Have you done any technical climbing? Because what we were finding too is that you could take, take a high level group. So you could have, typically a high level group, this would be 20 to 40-year-olds who are in pretty good fitness, or a 50 or 60-year-old who's kind of a freak. And then, you could take them, but then you might have, within that group, you might have someone who's a really strong on-trail hiker. They've done the Triple Crown, but they've never walked off trail, and they're not comfortable with heights. So how do you might take that individual and bump them down a little bit, so that they're a little bit more comfortable on the scrambly things.
Can we do a sample 5-question questionnaire for Chaunce right now, and then you
Sure.
recommend a route
Yeah.
for her?
Oh, we could do this.
Sure. Yeah, okay.
All right.
Like this.
Okay, so Chaunce, you are how old?
I'm 32.
Okay, you live in
Denver, Colorado.
Okay. I won't ask for your height and weight because I'm looking at you and I can kind of guess. Is that fair? Okay.
Sure.
How would you describe your fitness relative to peers? You can say below average, average, or above average, or way above average.
See, that would stress me out because when hiking,
Yeah.
above average.
Okay.
When not hiking, maybe below average.
Oh, you swing that much. I bet you actually don't swing that much, but this is...
You'd be surprised. I work from home and I
Yeah.
don't like leaving the house.
Okay, so average to below average to above average. That's a pretty big thing. But like this is why we don't just trust one piece of data.
Yeah.
Okay, so on a weekly basis, what do you do for fitness?
I wake up.
Okay.
I go over to my desk. I sit down. I get off my desk.
Okay.
And I go back to bed.
Okay. So, do you even walk your dog? You have a dog,
Yes,
don't
I walk
you?
my dog, but we also
Okay.
got a nice yard.
Okay.
So sometimes I throw balls for her, and I just give her little chases.
Okay. And then the most important question for someone like you would be what is on past trips, what has been the mileage or vertical that seems kind of sustainable?
If I'm in hiking shape, a 20 with 4,000 to 5,000 feet is a good day.
Okay. Yeah. So I would put you if you're in hiking shape, you're going to be on one of our high level trips. If it's a less active year for you, you're going to be probably a median.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I catch up fast though.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
And what we see too is that people who were athletes at some point in their life, they do better than someone who's has never been that athletic. So I would we had this last year. I would definitely take a 60-year-old who maybe played collegiate soccer, but now they're 60 years old. They're kind of out of shape. Maybe they've a little overweight. But I would definitely take them over a 25-year-old who does every day what you just described.
I don't
and has
blame
never
you.
done sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I want to double click on this questionnaire because that was fun. Can we ask risk tolerance questions
Yeah.
to see what route you'd recommend for Chaunce?
Okay. Do you let's see, how do we ask this? So on class 3 terrain, which would be described as requiring use of both hands and feet, but where the consequences of fall would be non-fatal, would you describe yourself as uncomfortable, comfortable, or very comfortable?
Now, if I fall, is this something where it's I slide a bit and I'm good, or is this something where I might have some broken bones?
Maybe the latter.
Fair-
You could definitely sprain an ankle, definitely
Yeah, probably fairly comfortable.
Okay.
I get vertigo a bit though. So if it's a steep ledge and a steep drop and I'm walking along it, I don't want to really look.
Okay.
Paintbrush
In the Tetons?
something name in the Tetons. That one was a little didn't look.
Okay.
Goat rocks, didn't love looking down both sides, but go rock climbing.
Okay.
So
Yeah, so we would probably discourage you from joining one of our technical canyoneering trips, because that's going to be that's going to have extensive scrambling. Can be pretty exposed. There are overhanging rappels. There's scrambling that we can't assist with a body belay or.
am I
anything
on a
like that.
rope? When you say rappels,
You would be on a rope with the bigger belays, but then there's just when you get into these canyons, there are a lot of things that are just it's just class 3, class 4, and
Yeah.
it's just not worth putting a rope up, or you can't.
yeah.
There's
Okay,
no way
cool.
to protect it.
I was gonna say my risk tolerance changes with a rope.
Yeah, so no technical canyoneering for you probably, but then we would definitely put you on a 5 or 7 day adventure trip, and we would expect maybe to just kind of walk you through some of the sketchier bits. But I think you would be just fine.
I think that sounds accurate.
What low exposure routes are some of the standouts?
The low exposure routes.
Yeah, or lower, I guess.
Yeah. So Utah is tough for people who have exposure issues. We do have some routes, but just the nature of that terrain, it tends to be cliffy. So Utah. So there are some routes in Utah that are okay, but that's going to be more of a basic level fitness or moderate level fitness that we would tend to do those trips for. Anything that's going to be median or up, you're going to have some scrambling at some point. There's just no way to avoid it. And then, let's see, Alaska is actually really good for, like, Alaska doesn't have that much exposure. It's huge terrain and really remote, but not very scrambly. The rock is kind of broken and it's not very cliffy. Yep.
Send me to Alaska. And then
And then the High Sierra, probably somewhere in between. The High Sierra just has, like, the off-trail opportunities there are so amazing. That's kind of like our big, like, classic location. I mean, we're doing sections of the Sierra High Route, the Kings Canyon High Basin Route, the Yosemite High Route, and that's why people are coming on those trips.
Yeah.
Yep. Yellowstone, not a lot of exposure.
That's nice.
Yep. And West Virginia, I would say, like, none.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to skip to this question because it segues too perfectly. If you had 1 week to backpack in each of the 4 time zones in the lower 48, where would you pick and
It's
why?
a Zach question. Don't tell me.
Such a good question.
It says you even gave yourself credit for the question.
Yeah.
It says -ZR Davis.
I was going through the questions and I'm like, you know what? I have my own question. I'm going to attribute it properly.
So we do the east. So on the East Coast, maybe this would be a good time. Can we bring Amanda in on the
We
mic?
sure can.
Yeah, of course. The whole time.
So I grew up in southeastern Mass, and, like, our go-to for family vacations or for, like, day hikes when I was in high school and could, like, drive, we'd go mostly up to New Hampshire. And I hadn't been hiking in New Hampshire since 2004. So it'd been like 20 years since I've been hiking in New Hampshire. So this summer we went back to visit some family, and we hiked Mount Lafayette. Amanda, I'm waiting for you to step in here and tell us about what the experience was like.
It was dumpster-sized rocks, and it poured rain the whole time. And we walked into the hut about halfway up and sat down, and every person that would come in, it was like something from a movie where the door would open and this gust of, like, moisture and clouds would come in to the hut, and it was so rocky.
What time of the year was this?
But it's nostalgic.
August.
Yeah, August. Okay.
Yeah. But it's nostalgic. I would still go if I had to pick an East Coast location, I would still say, yeah. I mean, I wrote my college essay about hiking in the White Mountains.
What was the essay about?
It was like a friend's trip. We climbed Mount Washington. I'm trying to remember the gist of the essay. I remember sort of describing Justin Nicholas. I think is it Lion's Head? Is that the trail? And he was kind of perched out on this, typical of, like, stupid high school things. Like, he's, like, found a rock that stuck way out, and he goes to the very edge of it, where if he falls, he's going to, like, fall to his death, basically. And I just remember having this realization of, like, or gaining this perspective in life about how small we are. Sort of, growing up in southeastern Mass, you don't appreciate the landscape in that way.
Yeah.
But so it was sort of a good perspective for me early on.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Lafayette in the whites for
Coast.
East Coast.
So that's what we'll do for East Coast. So now we're on to Central.
Mm-hmm.
Should we go to the Porcupine Mountains, or
I've never been to the Porkies.
or Pictured Rocks? I think that's where we'll go.
Where are they?
Pictured Rocks,
Michigan.
National Lakeshore is in the UP. It's a long way to get there, but and it kind of feels like Canada, but it's beautiful, and there's a nice trail. It's a segment of the North Country Trail right along the coast. Before and or afterwards, you can get some pasties.
So were you going through this in the dead of winter?
Yeah, I was there in the winter. Yeah.
And you liked it enough to want to go back?
It's very pretty.
Yeah.
I mean, but the pictures, you should see pictures of the summertime. It's gorgeous. I mean, the lake is like that deep, deep blue, and yeah, there's like lots of beautiful colors.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Is that also where the Porkies are?
The Porkies are a little further to the west, and the Porkies are similarly along the coastal area. So I think it's like 6 hours from Minneapolis.
Nice.
You can stop in Ironwood, which is like renowned for what a crazy town it used to be back in its logging heyday.
Huh. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
That was the one I was most intrigued to hear. The Central Time Zone, I feel like, is the toughest one.
Recently, I saw a map of so it's a color-coded map of like the number of hours you are to the closest national park.
Oh.
And there was like by far the worst was in that Central Time Zone.
Yeah.
Like long stretches where like it was like 10 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Southern Illinois, probably somewhere in that range.
It's a long, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a long way. Yeah. Which is kind of a shame because like there could be like a, Great Prairie National Park type thing. But by the time anyone thought about doing that, they had,
It's already cornfields.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
because there's some gorgeous areas out there.
Yeah. Really?
Well,
I'm
as
from
far as like
Illinois.
as far as like the plains,
Yeah.
like I mean it's its own ecosystem. I mean like the natural an area of the plains that is still like having its natural vegetation and still had like if it was a fully functioning ecosystem, it'd be beautiful.
Mm.
Yeah.
I just remember every time that I've driven through that part of the country, I'm
Well,
like,
of course, it's just homogenous.
Yeah.
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 But it didn't used to be like that.
Okay, this one should be a little bit easier. Maybe
Yeah.
harder because of how many options.
The abundance of options. So now we're in the mountain time zone. Boy, from a wilderness perspective, that like greater Yellowstone ecosystem that's hard to pass up. And within that, you have so many options. You go to the Winds, you go to the park, you go to like Teton Wilderness, you go over to the Tetons.
You get 1 week. You gotta pick something.
Yeah, I would go to the Winds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just bang for the buck. The winds are pretty spectacular. I will point out though, so this was an observation made by one of our guides this summer. So, Yellowstone, it's not a it's not like it's not your classic like mountain park. It has mountains, but the big highlights there, it's the thermal features and the wildlife, like by far, and it's also huge. So it has a totally different feel than the mountain areas around it.
Yeah. Did you have any good grizzly encounters in the first season?
No, it's a big group, so they tend to stay away. We did see a couple, but we had great wildlife all over the place. I remember a couple of nights in a row, we were in the upper Lamar, and the elk were bugling like crazy. They just were going nuts.
Yeah.
Which made it really fun. The birding there was phenomenal. Like, I remember we were hiking in up Pelican Valley, and it was just what's the name of that hawk? It's the northern harrier hawk. It kind of has like the face of an owl, and they were just like hawk after hawk after hawk. It was super cool.
Huh.
Yeah, and we also saw the cranes, the sandhill cranes, which I had never heard before. Super cool.
Are you a big bird guy?
So I got into birds in the pandemic.
We are bird nerds.
Yeah, we have. Yeah. So we got into birds during the pandemic, just like everyone else. And our first bird books, they were, it was like Birds for Colorado, and it was categorized by color, which is great, because like you'd see a black bird and you'd open up to the black chapter and like just start flipping through pages until you found it. And then, I got more sophisticated after that. So at this point, I think I have like 3 or 4 birding apps on my phone, and I'll sit in the backyard and like be like, oh, yep, that's a northern flicker, and yep, that's definitely a blue jay over there, and and we had some Cooper's hawks that were coming into our backyard this spring. We probably shouldn't say this in a program in an industry that really advocates LMNT, but Amanda has a family of crows that come every morning. They call her.
Yeah.
And they won't stop.
I only give them fresh water and some oats.
Yep.
Oats? Okay.
What are their names?
Have not done that yet. Give me time.
Yeah.
True or false that crows have incredible memories? Like, if you harm it when it's a young bird, it'll remember basically until its dying day that it hates you.
Yeah, I've read that. Mm-hmm.
Have they brought you any gifts yet?
No, but I would love it if they would like leave me a little trinket of some kind. Yeah, that would be really cool.
Gotta step up from the oats. How many bird feeders do you guys have?
We have one, and it's like the Fort Knox of bird feeders. So at our old place, we started off with just like your basic, like $30 bird feeder, and it took like a day for the squirrels to realize.
Yeah, we have that issue.
Okay. So then it was like, all right, well, how are we going to outsmart the squirrels? So I tried putting Crisco on the pole, which was
the shepherd's hook that it hangs on.
which was hysterical because they would jump on the pole and they would just slide.
I've seen those videos before. They're
And
always very
then we
entertaining.
tried the slinky. So if you put a slinky on the pole, they'll basically climb up it, and then they'll grab the slinky, and the slinky basically will just drop them back down to the ground.
Huh.
All humane
Yeah.
methods.
And then, but then what we never figured out how to outsmart them on was that they just decided to do what did we call when they started jumping? What was like the move?
We had a fence nearby, and they would do acrobatics. It was actually phenomenal. I mean, some people I know don't like squirrels. I know they're rodents, but they are such persistent, amazing little animals, and so we failed everything we tried. They failed.
would jump like 7-8 feet from the fence and like stick it on. It was like Sylvester Stallone in Cliffhanger, right?
Yeah.
So then we finally at one point I upgraded. I went over to McGuckin's, which is the famous hardware store in Boulder, and I spent over $100 on a bird feeder that has a cage around it. So nowadays only the chickadees and the nuthatches and the finches can get to the seed.
So you don't have to add any additional contraptions, just a high-level bird feeder.
Yep.
Okay, that's nice.
And I actually did a cost benefit and figured out that in the long run it was going to be cheaper because I would go buy 50-pound bags of sunflower seed, and I'm like, well, this is just going to the squirrels, and started doing the math on how much seed we were going through every month. I'm like, oh yeah, this bird feeder is going to pay for itself.
Yeah.
How much were you going through in bird feed a month?
I don't remember, but it definitely was in a spreadsheet.
Okay, last bird question. What is your current bird count? If you get 3
Oh,
apps.
I don't. Yeah, no, don't do the count.
Really?
I'm still I don't know. It's not I'm never gonna go to the Galapagos to knock off a
Don't say
bunch
never.
of yeah, it's true. Yeah, I'm only 43.
2028 Skirka's bird trip.
Yeah,
You're gonna go bird watching for a week.
I just think for me the birds are fall into the same category as why I got into geology and other topics, or and plants and trees and wildflowers, is because is a type of plant. But it was just a way to appreciate more about the area that I was in. At some point, backpacking, just how to backpack, I figured that out. And there definitely are some trips that still push me to my edge, but most of the time I have extra bandwidth to take a look around and enjoy other aspects of it.
And now we figure out birds.
Mm-hmm.
Love that.
Do you know what the next frontier is beyond birds?
I still have a lot of room to go with the birds. I mean, we have a guide on Jeff Wall, who's one of our guides. He is he's gone out with Sibley before, and he can any bird he hears, he knows what it is. And then not only does he know what the bird is, but he can tell you all sorts of cool things about it. So I still have a lot of room to grow.
An Amanda question. From the sounds of it, Skirka has a lot of micro hobbies. What are some that he won't fess up to on this that he has?
Oh gosh, he's really into yard work and landscaping.
Oh my God.
That is one. Let's see. Also, any type of construction, home improvement. Last night I caught him watching a YouTube video of how to redo brick.
Repoint brick.
Oh, repoint brick. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I would love to see some photos of your guys' backyard. I'm sure it's very meticulously done.
It's getting there.
The mower lines?
Yeah. He also, he takes, if he wants to cook or make a recipe, he takes that pretty seriously, as I'm sure you can imagine. So he's got a few recipes that are his favorites that he likes to do.
What's the worst thing he's ever cooked?
Ooh. I don't know. This isn't
shaking his head.
This isn't the worst because some people would like this, but elk hunting too. That's a big, and so this ties into this. He hasn't gone elk hunting for a couple of years, but so he's brought home elk before, and so I'm not into the wild game. He's tried, he's put it in chili, he's made steaks with it, and that's just not. I grew up eating venison, so it's just not my thing anymore. But so that's probably the only meal I can think of. that he's made that just wasn't for me. But he's meticulous at everything he does. So he makes a mean mac and cheese. Yeah.
Does he collect anything?
No.
Clothes on
Well,
the
I mean,
floor.
other than running shoes.
Yeah.
Running shoes.
Who
I would
has more
say.
shoes between the two of you?
I'm not kidding when I say it's probably a pretty close tie. He has bins of shoes that are either sentimental and he doesn't want to get rid of them, or he has a lot of running shoes.
Yeah. Do you have trouble throwing away shoes that are past their prime? Like, I have a bunch of Ultra Escalantes, and once they start wearing holes and like the midsole's gone, I'm like, these are good weightlifting shoes. So I've got
totally.
4-year-old Escalantes
Yeah.
lying around, and I was like, please, you get so many shoes for free. Like, stop doing
So
this.
we moved in February, and that was a good opportunity for me to cull my shoe collection, because I had done the exact same thing. Like this pair of shoes, this would be perfect for, that one day a winter when the conditions are like when the trail's like just like icy at the top and muddy at the bottom, and
You've got a shoe for every occasion.
Yeah. Well, that's what that. If you're a runner, you have shoes like the way that a skier has skis or a biker has bikes. Like every shoe it performs differently enough that you kind of know the shoe. You have favorite shoes for certain occasions.
Yeah. Let's say the top 3 models of shoes to get you through a year. I'm sure we'll be leaving out some models. I'm sure you cycle through more than 3, but if you had to pick 3, what are you going with and why?
Good questions. So for hiking, the La Sportiva Bushido has been like a favorite for a long, long time. But then the Mutant is actually like maybe even getting like to be more of my favorite.
Is that La Sportiva also? I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's the one that has that funky tongue. I can wear it in almost everything that it can do, almost everything that the Bushido can do, but it's sand resistant. So it works. It's an awesome shoe for Utah. So that's for backpacking, and that's where I stop. And then for
Some
running,
aggressive lugs on that too.
Yep. And then for running, I kind of got on a Nike train a couple years ago when I started getting back into road running. So the Pegasus, which they're now up to generation 41.
I think they have a Buffalo Bills version
Probably.
of it. I got an email about it, and I
Yeah.
wanted to buy it.
Yeah, they
I
have
didn't.
the Duke Blue Devils version and the artistic or what do they call it? They have artists in residence at the Nike campus, and they'll have those versions. So I do the Pegasus, and then the Wild Horse is also a great shoe, and then the Air Kiger.
Looks like this has a very beefy midsole.
The Pegasus?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a road running shoe.
Okay.
Yeah,
What shoes are you wearing right now?
Oh, I'm wearing a pair of bean boots, LL bean boots, which I kind of bust out in conditions like this. So yeah, your listeners probably don't know, but we have like 4 or 5 inches of snow up in Boulder. And,
Yeah.
I didn't have to get out my Arian snowblower, but I did. But yeah, conditions are bad, so I was gonna wear my leather shoes down here.
Cool.
And if you're from the Northeast, basically bean boots, it's like business casual attire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Timberlands in New York.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So yeah, in Boston, it's like perfectly acceptable to have bean boots and a suit.
Yeah.
That's probably exaggerated, but something like that.
Okay, so we were on Mountain Time Zone. That we
talking
about.
I was just thinking we'd bring it back.
Yeah, squirrels. Now Pacific Time Zone.
Okay, so if we go to the Pacific, the very easy answer there, I would go in the High Sierra, and of the High Sierra locations, I still find that Sequoia Kings that's kind of the jewel down there. Like it has the highest point. It's like the highest elevation in the High Sierra. It has the lowest elevation in the High Sierra. The off-trail travel is blissful but hard. There are very few access points because your only access is either at Lodgepole or at Road's End, and Road's End has been closed closed all of 2023, part of 2024. So it's just hard for people to get in there. So there's some. It's no surprise that the last place in the High Sierra to get mapped was in Sequoia Kings.
Do you have any trips in either the Cascades or the Olympics?
We're running some trips in the Olympics, and I pitched it out to clients to ask whether they wanted to go to the Olympics or to Yellowstone last year, and it was like universally wanted to go to Yellowstone.
Mm.
Really?
Yeah. I think the Olympics are spectacular, but they're not. I don't think they're on a lot of people's radar. But it's a great location. Like, we've been pretty good on smoke in the last couple of years in the West, but like, it is, of all the locations in the West, it is the most likely to be smoke free in September.
This
'Cause
reminds
it's right on
me
the coast.
of a tangent I've got to tell you.
Mm.
Maybe I told you it the last time you were on here. Tell me if this sounds familiar. I feel like I've said this before, but maybe I haven't. But you had made a Facebook post when there was fire along like areas in Washington, telling something about the Olympics being mostly smoke-free.
Mm-hmm.
And I had told my director at my old job, because she was supposed to go on a trip out there that was going to get kind of foiled with the smoke.
Mm.
She asked me, she was like, "You backpack, do you know where to go?" And I was like, "I would say the Olympics," based on Skirka's post. And she got engaged on that trip. Yeah.
Aww.
So she went to the Olympics because I saw your post and told her to go there, and her fiance proposed to her there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Glad I played a small role in that.
So
I hope they're still together.
yeah, they are.
This is also kind of tangential to the very meandering answer we got there. This is from the Ken in Kentucky. How experienced do you have to be to cover the Wind River High Route?
Oh, that's a good question. So, I'd say like the experience level that you want to have is having done, already being familiar with the Rockies or the Sierra, because the winds in the Sierra are actually pretty similar. Both are granitic lakes, tend to have like favorable summertime weather. So like they're not like identical, but they're pretty similar. So experience in the Rockies or in the Sierra, and then some off-trail travel skills. So that would be both like the sort of operational, like how to read a map correctly, and how to use a compass, and how to use GPS apps, or not just GPS apps, but like you need to know how to use like Caltopo or Gaia, like not far out. Like you can't just be like, what is it, red dot on blue line?
You're right.
Okay, yeah, I've proud to say I've never used far out, so I could have gotten the colors reversed and I wouldn't have known.
It's been a minute since I've even used far out. Is it
think-
blue dot, red line?
I think the line is red.
Yeah.
The line is okay. So you're
I've been a good girl. I've been on Onyx for the past couple.
okay. So some app though that that you're using to measure distances, measure vertical, find bearings, whatever it might be. So use that GPS. Use the altimeter. So there's kind of the mechanical of like, do you know how to use your navigational toolkit? But then the other piece of it is like, do you know how to find efficient routes across terrain? And that's a matter of reading the landscape. And it's kind of this algorithm of like saying, all right, well, I'm here and I want to go over to there. And in between here and there, what's the most efficient path? And you're trying to, when you consider efficiency, you're thinking about distance and vertical gain and loss and vegetation and hazards like river crossings or avalanche paths, or you're trying to think about where there might be game trails. You're trying to optimize the footings, like avoiding talus and like keeping it mostly on tundra. So it's kind of this, you're weighing all of these factors and trying to figure out what that efficient line is. And so that would be like your ideal minimum experience level, that you know how to travel off trail, you're familiar with that area, or you know how to travel off trail a little bit, you're familiar with that area.
Yeah. I'm sure it doesn't surprise you, but a lot of the people that I've known that have done the Wind River High Route don't have any compass skills.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
On the Wind River High Route, compass skills wouldn't be like necessarily critical. I mean, almost at all times you can just read the map, and the features there are so obvious. Like, the landscape is so big. You're looking at huge cliff faces and really distinctly shaped peaks, and you almost always have good visibility. So I think map reading would be okay. I mean, if I did the Wind River High Route, I wouldn't, like me personally, I wouldn't bother bringing a compass.
Mm.
Based on my answers to my exposure questions, would I be a good fit for the Wind River High Route?
There would be times that you'd be sketched, but you could probably get through it.
Okay. Like what percentage of the time would I be sketched?
I was shitting my pants approaching the West Gully. Like that was
the West Gully.
Yeah, this is why. Well, your descriptions are why I think maybe I might not be a good candidate.
Once you're on it, it's a little bit less terrifying than what it appears to be as you're approaching it. But the approach was one of the most terrifying experiences I've ever had in backpacking.
Wow.
I would like there to be a little like whiteboard at the top or bottom of that, and to be like, if you cursed Skirka's name in the West Gully, please leave just a tally.
Yeah.
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 You could put like a game camera just facing it, so you could always check.
Yeah.
Is that the feature that you would say is the most visually terrifying?
That's the one that everyone hates because it's long and it's steep, and for a lot of hikers it's going to come at the very beginning of the trip. You go climb up Wind River Peak, and you're like, cool, like we're starting. Look, you can see all the way to Gannett, and like you're all pumped up, and then you walk like a quarter mile to the west, and you're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
And you have a week's worth of food, and it's like, oh, this is going to be hard.
Yeah. I kept thinking like, there's got to be a different way down. There's no way this is it, right? Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
We'll end with this one. This is from _Gorgonzola. It's a play on Gorgonzola.
Sounds like a cheese.
Yeah. It's not Gorgonzola. It's Gorgonzola. There we go. Best toilet paper alternatives.
Ooh, yeah. Top on that list is corn lily. So corn lily, I don't know if it grows back east, but it definitely is in the west. Like in most of the Mountain West environments, it's a riparian plant, and you'll notice these big leafy. These big leaves on it, and they're kind of like how they're like a little accordioned, and it's perfect because it's a big leaf. It has some texture to it, so like, it's not waxy like a rhododendron leaf, and you can it's thick, and they're usually in abundance, so you can just grab one and kind of fold it up, and that's a great alternative to toilet paper.
They get stinky in the fall. Remember,
They start. They'll just start deteriorating in the fall.
Yeah.
Like you'll start getting they start getting eaten, or they start rotting, so you'll get the holes in the leaves.
Yeah. I remember doing the Colorado Trail in September, and like as they were turning brown, like it just had a very distinct smell in all stretches where they were present.
Yeah. By September, it's not a reliable.
Yeah.
We do run a lot of trips still in September, or or for years too, even in like the end of July in the Sierra, it was really dry. So sticks that are debarked and not dirty are kind of like the most reliable natural wiping material in the West.
You accidentally do it. Ew, that wasn't worth. Have you ever accidentally poked yourself in the bum while wiping with a stick?
I mean, I'm not jamming. It's a light graze.
Okay.
Give yourself a second.
And for your listeners, I think it might be like we've talked about the bidet before on this trip. But so my recommendation to people, as far as like how to wipe out there, I like to start with natural materials. So like corn lily sticks, maybe a river rock, and I'm using that to get kind of like to do the heavy lifting. So like the bulk of the mass.
Got some messy poos.
I mean, they're not messy, but they are. It is poo. Yeah. So, and then once I've used some natural materials for that heavy lifting, then I like to go in with the backcountry bidet to kind of get it really basically to get my butt shower clean. And the backcountry bidet, you're taking a water bottle. Like a beginner backcountry bidet user would want like a half a liter of water. If you're good at it, you can get away even a quarter liter. It's not that much water. And the techniques are a little bit different for men and women. But the basic idea though is you're introducing water to your anus, and you're getting your hand in there, and you're getting you're washing your butt.
With your hand.
Physical contact is necessary. And man, I mean, what a difference that made in my backpacking career. It's before the bidet, I would get itchy. I would smell more, and I would get a lot more chafing. And once I started using the bidet, like all those three things improved or like were eliminated.
Yeah.
I have a quick story.
Sure.
Yeah, of course.
So I remember on the Great Western Loop, so this was 2007, I remember walking, I was in Oregon on the Pacific Crest Trail, and my butt was itching me so badly that I would remember just scratching at it, like just like taking like minutes to scratch at my butt. And I remember thinking at one point, I'm like, oh, like this is like how, like it would feel so good when I would scratch. And I would be like, I remember thinking like, oh, this is what a dog must feel like when it scratches itself.
Sure.
Like just that like incessant scratching, and you're like, what is going on with
Yeah.
my dog? It's just scratching.
Yeah. No, I've had the repetitive scratch before, to the point where like your finger smells through 2 layers of fabric, kind of a scratch.
Yeah.
Why are you smelling it after?
Because you've been touching your asshole. You're like,
Curiosity.
is my hand safe? It's
no,
not. It's not safe.
It definitely has poo on it.
Yeah.
Through your shorts.
It went through underwear and
Yeah.
shorts and is now a part of
And
my
it's
hand.
amazing, like that. All that just went. Like I can't believe that it took me like 30,000 miles to figure out that if I just washed my butt every once in a while,
Yeah.
that would go away.
Do you miss the satisfaction of scratching your asshole?
Just about to ask that.
I mean, I'm still free to do it. Like I can
You
do
don't
it
have
even if
to.
I don't need to. Yeah.
All right.
I had a realization during this conversation that today was the first day of my life that I have shaken your hand. Every other time you've come here, I have refused. Have you noticed? But like jokingly, I've told you too. Every time you're like,
I know.
I'm like,
I do remember that now that
thinking
you
about
say
that
that.
today. Enough time has passed.
Well, you know what?
Now
Good
I
news
keep
for
thinking
you.
about my
I
hand.
don't use my left hand to wash. And not only better news is that
We
at
ship
our
with our
house
rights.
we have bidets on every toilet.
Does that ruin the backcountry bidet for you? Because I know that's a really different experience.
Yeah, so we have those Lux bidets on the toilets in our house, and like it's pretty lovely.
Are they heated?
Lie. We
No,
don't have
that
the
would be
heated
nice.
ones, but we did have the electrical put in, so if we did want to upgrade,
You're laying the
it's
groundwork
there,
for
it's
some
there. But yeah.
for some hot water.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Question for Amanda.
Sure.
What was your reaction the first time that you learned about Andrew's backcountry bidet system?
Oh, the backcountry bidet. yeah.
Specifically, bare hand on bare ass contact.
Probably when you put up the video for it. I mean, when we had gone out together before, I definitely had used what is the name of it? The corn
Corn lily.
Yeah, the corn lily. Mm-hmm. But I think probably when the video went up.
That's when you learned about it?
Mm-hmm, probably.
He
Yeah.
didn't like sit you down and be like, I have something to tell you.
No. No.
She learns a lot of things about me.
I learn a lot of things online.
Online.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do your parents ever comment on the things that they see about Skirka wiping his butt with his hand?
No, and my father would.
Your father
so.
would have some funny things to say
Yeah.
about that. He would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is your hiking background? How much backpacking and or hiking do you guys do together?
Very little. Yeah, he's usually, it's his profession, so he's usually pretty busy, gone doing it all summer, and so we don't get to go out as much together as probably a lot of people would assume. The last trip that I went on was 2 years ago
Oh my gosh.
in Great Sand Dunes, and I've gone to Yosemite with him in a group on a 7-day. But yeah, the last trip I did was in Great Sand Dunes, and it was intense.
A legit foot of snow fell overnight.
Whoa.
Like a foot. Like a measurable foot. It was the most snow I'd ever seen in a night.
And
on
we were at
any
like
single trip.
10,000 feet.
Yeah, on an intra-level trip. Yeah, I remember we went to bed that night, and like we knew it was coming in. We just didn't know like how much was going to come in. And it started snowing, and I was like, okay, I can hear it. And then like it stopped. Like I could no longer hear the snow. So I just went to sleep. And I remember waking up at like midnight, and then looked up, opened my eyes, and like the tent is like 3 inches from my face. And I realized that it hadn't stopped snowing at all. It's that there was so much snow in the tent that it was like insulating the sound. And then so it's like, all right, well I dug us out, and then I went around and like had to dig everybody else out in like the middle of the night. And I'm struggling to find people at this point. And then I was up probably about 4 or 5 times that night just digging people out.
Whoa.
So that was the last trip she was on. And then a lot of our other trips too, like I think this is actually like important. So when Amanda and I first started dating, so we started dating in the end of 2010. And so we did some trips in 2011, just
Yep,
the two of
I
us.
experienced post-holing for the first time, and
that was the night. So
some
the
nice
first
casual
the first,
winter
post-hole.
No,
Yeah.
it was actually the 4th of July. It had been a big winter. A Basin was still, like, that was one of the years they stayed open through the 4th of July. So we went up backpacking in Summit County, 4th of July, and so we go out there, and I just, I'm like, this is the only way I know how to backpack was kind of through hiker style. So she wants to brush her teeth that night, so I hand her a bottle of Dr. Bronner's.
To brush your teeth with?
Dr. Bronner's. Yep, with a toothbrush that is basically just the
You
head.
You brush your teeth with Dr. Bronner's, Andrea?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, and
I don't recommend
the
it.
dentist says, like, it's total life. Every time I'm coming back from a long trip, like, after brushing my teeth with Dr. Bronner's for months, dentist is like, yeah, looks good.
Actually, know other people that do that.
But here's
Really? I've never heard
but here's
that.
the thing about Dr. Bronner's, though. So, like, it only takes a couple of drops. So if you think that, like, if you put an amount of Dr. Bronner's on your toothbrush in a similar amount that you would do with toothpaste, so Amanda's like frothing. She looks like she's
got rabies.
She's like rabid. Exactly.
Which flavor
and then
of Bronner's?
so it gets better.
I think it was a mint.
Peppermint.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah. So then she goes off. She brushes to brush her teeth to get ready. Wash up her whatever. And then she comes back and she sees the tent that I have set up. And I had it was a Go-Light Shangri-La 2. And it was July, and like there's still snow on the ground, so there are no bugs out yet. So I didn't bother bringing the inner or a floor. So she walks around the whole shelter, like peeking underneath, like maybe from a different angle there might be an inner on it. It's like there's no inner. So that was like our first backpacking trip, and then we did a couple of others. And I got to be honest, like there were definitely some trips that, like, I just should have been more attentive to, like, realizing that as the stronger and more experienced group member, that like this trip shouldn't have been about me. It was like it should have been about Amanda. There was the other trip. Remember when we did we went up to James Peak and the St. Mary's Glacier, and like we basically like left in the afternoon and just got clobbered by a thunderstorm. And then the thunderstorm, like,
running around on the ridge. I mean, I thought for sure we were going to get struck by lightning. It was sketchy. We've done some fun trips down in Bears Ears.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we did a good trip in Bears Ears. Yeah.
Were you hiking, backpacking before you met Andrew?
No.
So he takes you out on one of the first trips and it dumps a foot of snow and then puts Dr. Bronner's on your toothbrush and you're post-holing.
the lightweight backpacking, right. He talked about the tarp. I'm from Michigan. I'm picturing like a tent, maybe a cot inside or something. I don't know. And I'm sleeping on a closed foam. And I did sleep on. I have slept with my food because when we would go out initially, that was my pillow. Sleeping on my bag of food. Yeah. We do now, though. I will say, if he's feeling generous, a splurge for me is I get to maybe bring my Kindle. And like a washcloth to like wash my face or something. Those are my bougie additions.
That's pretty great.
How did you guys meet?
Oh, this is actually a pretty good story. So we're a bit of a rarity that we didn't meet on. It wasn't an online dating thing, which was still big and at the time was really big. So we met through a mutual friend, and the first time that I met him was when he was doing his first practice run presentation for a group of friends that would become the presentation that he did detailing his Alaska Yukon trip. And so I was invited to this dry run presentation and met
She's
this
like,
guy.
That's my guy.
Yeah.
Who'd been in Alaska 6 months.
I can see stability in him.
In real life, she slid into your DMs right there. So did you approach him after the talk?
No, I did not. No, he reached out. He did the very appropriate thing and reached out to so we met through this mutual friend that we had both known, and he reached out to her to make sure it was okay to get my contact information. And the first time the first time he called and left me a message, when he left the message, he said, "Hey, this is Alaska Andy." And I was really nervous, of course, to go on the first date with him, thinking, what is this going to be for a first date? Like, are we going to climb a 14er? What is going to happen here? But totally normal first date. We went to the zoo. It was wintertime, and we went to see Zoo on Lights, and then went and had a nightcap.
I showed up with my own car.
I was very excited to see that he had his own car.
And it was clean.
Zoo Lights is a great date, first of all. What was
the second date?
The second date was running in Boulder in the Shanahan Ridge area at night, and I do think at one point I stopped and was like, "Is this a test?"
It was.
I'm gonna need to measure your VO2 max. So the first overnight trip where he's got you under a tarp on a torso length closed foam pad, what's going through your head at that point? Because that's not how most people backpack ever, let alone for their first trip. Certainly not.
No, I mean, I'm pretty real, and there have been many times where I have no problem making it known to him that I am not pleased.
Yeah.
I mean, there was...
But that was less likely to happen in the, that courting phase.
Sure. Everyone's on their best behavior.
Yeah. Nowadays, I would get more of an earful than I did on that trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but I mean, kind of a shock, again, a shock
sport.
to the system, though, things that I had not experienced. I mean, because remember, too, this is when he was still using the cat food can for the stove.
Yeah.
Oh,
so nothing happens quickly. It's cold in the morning. You have to wait for your coffee or tea or whatever it is, and everything is shaved off to be shorter to save weight, and... it was definitely a shock.
I might have cooked cowboy coffee the next morning too, because I don't even think I would have used Via back then. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so probably cowboy coffee. So that's
is cowboy coffee just like a French press?
No, it's like hot water. You put the coffee grounds in. You let it seep, and then you just pour and try not to get a lot of grounds in your cup.
So you're chewing your coffee, basically?
There's definitely some grounds in there for sure. Yeah.
So when did you know he was the one?
And I will say too, he always brought good snacks though. That always helps. The good snacks, the chocolate.
Did you whip out the Skirka beans on that first overnighter?
Oh, I don't remember what we had.
I don't remember either, but I have had all the meals, and I've helped. There was a time where I helped kind of tweak some of the recipes.
What's your favorite backcountry recipe?
I do love the peanut noodles. That's one of my favorites. Yep, the peanut noodles. When did I know he was the one? Gosh. I mean, I will say it.
Jury's still out.
Right. It was pretty sexy, that this person, even despite how tough it was, the tarps and not being able to have any creature comforts, and but he always, he's pretty risk averse, and so I've always appreciated, and again, it's always been kind of sexy that, like, he's out there, he's taking good care of you, he knows what he's doing, and usually he's not going to put you in a situation where you feel unsafe, or he's got something to prove, or, he's going to push you a little bit. And just by nature...
That's a key part of it. Yeah.
Just by nature of hiking with him and being a normal person, whereas he is not normal in this regard, you're pushed physically. But I've always appreciated about him that there's a groundedness, there's a level-headedness. He's not out to prove anything, which is refreshing given what he does and the many opportunities that he could do that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I wouldn't continue to do these things with him given how fledgling I am. So just the fact that when we did meet, I didn't have that experience. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what to expect. Clearly, he was doing something right if I'm going to continue to do these things with him. There was never a moment where I was like, I don't feel safe. I'm not doing this with you anymore. Although there was one time in the High Sierra where I think this was pre-even engagement, and I think we were pretty close to me being like, what am I doing with this person? I don't know if I can. But again, it was a moment where it was
totally
just,
safe.
It
was like legit.
It was one of the things that you mentioned where it was just a lot of exposure, and we were with a group of people, so I was just feeling maybe a little vulnerable about my abilities, about my skills. Some of these people had far more experience than I did, and I don't love exposure either. It's not even the heights, it's just how exposed, what is the type of incline that we're on. And so that was a rough night. I was pretty upset with him that night.
Really upset. I definitely thought I was going to be single after that.
If you gave me 100 adjectives to describe Andrew, I would have not included risk averse in any of those. That's
I would absolutely describe him that way. He's never going to put people in a situation that is dangerous.
It's calculated. Like you might, like the things that we do or the things that I do are like yes, inherently risky, but there's always thought. Like it's not willy-nilly.
Yeah. I don't presume that you're risk seeking when you've got a group. Obviously that's a different circumstance.
Yeah, but my personal approach, my guiding approach is reflected in my personal approach, or vice versa. Like, as an example, like it was a big deal for me to like a big step up for me to do the Alaska Yukon expedition, which for your listeners, that was so this was 2010, it was just before Amanda and I met. It's 4,700 miles, 6 months around Alaska and Yukon. Started on skis, and then switched out to a packraft and hiking. And that was a big step up from the trips that I'd done before that. But like I had all the necessary skills. I just hadn't put them together on some at that scale.
Yeah, that was after North Country Trail and the Great Western Loop.
Yeah.
That was the one that got you Nat Geo Adventure of the Year.
That was the one that was the trip that produced that big National Geographic feature.
Yeah.
So the guided trips are similar, where I'm not gonna, and they're catered to a long time ago. I think early. So I've kind of joked about this with clients or long-time alumni who've been on a lot of trips. But I think early on in the guided trips, some of those trips were they're kind of my trips, and the clients were along for the ride. There was a part of Sequoia Kings or a part of Yosemite that I wanted to go see, and I was gonna crack the whip enough to make sure that we got there. And some of those trips ended up they didn't always end up with great results. Definitely there were trips where I pushed people a little bit too much, and where or my thinking was that this one extra pass is gonna make the trip today, but that actually wasn't the case. So it took me a long time to kind of figure that out. So nowadays the trips are appropriate we try to make them very appropriate for the people that are on them, and we're kind of fine tuning them along the way. If a group shows up and they're fitter than I expected, then we're gonna ratchet it up a little bit if they want to do that. If they are less fit than we maybe expected, we'll just ratchet it down a little bit. But it took me a while to figure that out, and unfortunately, Amanda in our early days was the victim of figuring that out.
I have an Amanda question that I think will also segue into another one, but as the person that's staying at home while Skirka's doing all the Skirka trips, we hear a lot from people hiking the AT, people hiking, whatever their big trail is going to be, bringing a sat nav and the relationship between that and the person at home, and the person at home not getting too dependent on hearing from it, and when to know this is normal versus not. As someone who's typically at home while he's out on all these trips, do you have anything to say just kind of in regards to the communication via sat nav and what you've learned to be comfortable and uncomfortable with?
I know you carry the satellite phone with you, but we haven't.
We don't carry satellite phones anymore.
Because we're now at a point where we can communicate with the Zoleo. But we don't. When he's out on a trip or in the field, we'll go days without talking. If nothing else, I'll get a text, the canned text that lets me know, hey, we're at camp, everything's okay. There haven't been too many times where I've been worried or I haven't heard from him, although I don't remember if it was Alaska or the Sierra. It was one of the first times that I actually I was really close to texting Katie, his co-director, because she wasn't out on the trip yet, and he was, because I wasn't hearing back from him. But it's really tough because all I can do is text. You know, we're not talking on the phone. There is no FaceTime. And frankly, even when in the old days when he would use the sat phone, those are not reliable. The reception is terrible. And so, you know, that person might be able to call you, but it's not going to be a quality phone call. So
let me be a little bit more real. Anyone who goes on a long distance hike and thinks that the relationship is going to be better on the other side has got like
True.
a rude awakening. Like, that is just not what happens. It's really tough on us.
Yeah, it's very hard.
How many days out of the year are you traveling for the guiding trips?
I was gone last year for 12 weeks.
12 weeks. In your opinion, what's the sweet spot for the number of days for Andrew being traveling?
Sure. This was the first year where there was a significant decrease, more than any other years.
It's been a decrease. Yeah, I mean,
It's been a slow decrease.
Yeah, like we were like, you know, like a lot of outdoor things, 2022 is nuts. I was gone, I think, probably like 14 weeks in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
12 weeks is definitely too many. I mean, we would love to get it down to 6, 8.
It's hard but he's also changed the structure. You know, it sometimes will be this game of, is he gone for, there have been times where he's been gone for 4 weeks. But then there are other times where maybe it's 3 and he's back for a week, and it's 3 and he's back for a week. And so it's super disruptive because 3 weeks you're just getting into your groove of, I've got my routine, self-preservation, like I can do this. And then he comes in for a week and it's just chaotic. And so it's tough, and we haven't necessarily figured out how to navigate that perfectly.
It's a kind way of saying that by October of every year, our relationship is on fumes.
And
like,
I'm pretty independent, and I've always worked full time, and so it's not, you know, it's not that I don't have anything to do, but that's just, I mean, I have expressed before that by the time guiding season is done, it's like, that's it. I can't, like, that's too much. I can't be alone that much.
Do you foresee phasing yourself out of actually traveling for the guiding trips?
No. Less, but none. I mean, guiding is the most fun part.
Yeah.
I think the analogy is, it's like, you know, if you look at like teachers, so a lot of teachers, they get into it because they love being in the classroom. They love like working with kids and watching them grow and develop. And that's what I love doing as a guide. I love taking a group out, and it doesn't matter the experience level. I love being out on trips with new backpackers who have never slept on the ground before, who have never shit in the woods. And I also love being out with, you know, much like, you know, triple crowners who have no idea how to travel off trail in Alaska. Mm-hmm. So I can go both ways. So I love guiding and I love that teaching element, but like a lot of teachers, they get into administration because they want to have some influence or they want more pay. And then they get, you know, so they take on the role of a principal or a superintendent. And then they're like, you know, the best, all I do nowadays is push paper and like talk to angry parents. So guiding is kind of similar where, you know, I'm running the organization, and some parts of that are, you know, you run your own small business, like, you know, payroll reports and taxes and commercial permits and, you know, kind of all that, like anything that a small business owner has to do, like that's all like kind of been there, done that. I don't need to do it again, but I still have to. Mm-hmm. So I never want to stop guiding.
Yeah.
I could definitely see what I would see before I stopped guiding is that I am not involved at all or very, very loosely with the operations. And then I go out and like get to spend time in the field.
With this episode coming out on December 2nd, we're probably in the time frame where people are having those couple conversations of, hey, honey, I kind of want to go do this trail in April.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any tips for how to navigate the pre-trail part to set the right expectations so that it's not just a dumpster fire?
So I think in an ideal world, I mean, if you can go into it in good shape, like, so if you're doing your regular date nights, if your communication skills every day are good, you know, if you're like present with each other, I think that goes a long way. And on the back end, like, you need to get back into a structure for like how to work with your relationship. I mean, I say that in theory because like it can be tough, like when you're preparing for a trip is like an all out effort, and there can't be a detail that gets left undone. Like I can't not show up with maps. I can't not show up with all the food. I can't, there's just stuff that needs to get done. So,
So like we can't go on a trip together the week before he leaves.
Yes.
So it's the trips, it's the time that he's gone on the trips, but it's also, it's a solid, let's say 2 weeks of planning and preparing and packing, and then when he gets back, he's worked, and there is the administrative piece that needs to be done.
Yeah, I haven't looked at my inbox in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, but for most people though, so this is a little different circumstance because I'm guiding and I'm responsible for a lot of people. I mean, if you are going out on your own, like that would be my recommendation. Like definitely like be in good shape before you go and have a structure for when you get back. I also would like really encourage people to like, if they're struggling either before or after, like really seriously consider some therapy. Like that will. In fact, I mean, just last week I had a call with our marriage therapist because, and like ironically, so I always keep notes about appointments, and the last time I talked to him was also November, and we joked about it because it's basically like I come back and it should be like, oh honey, like so great, the guiding season's over. I'm so happy to be back with you. Like this is gonna be, all the problems we were having over the summer, it should be over now that I'm back. And then 6 weeks goes by and you're like, oh man, we are just like struggling. So
what is the source of the friction by November? Because the way that you described it makes sense to me. So what is the lingering friction?
Well, it's more of a recognition that just being back isn't enough.
Yeah.
I think that's what happens.
And the other unique thing is, and this might sound trivial, but he's gone over the summer, for most people, depending on where they live, like the best time of the year. It's family vacations, it's 4th of July, and so I for over a decade now, my summers, I mean, I've had to go visit family alone because he's gone. It's just not your typical summer. And so
we haven't been together for 4th of July since 2020.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and before we push the button here, you were advising Chaunce on her wedding date to not get married in August because that having an anniversary in peak backpacking season can create some strife. Is that?
It's not strife. It's just that like whatever you're doing in August, which like you probably want to be backpacking, you're going to have to get back to celebrate your anniversary.
So are you back every August 10th?
I try to be. Yeah, in fact, I actually think I have been back. Now, whether we actually like do something to celebrate, that's like another matter. But
we like 1 year we hiked the Aspen Forepass Loop, which was a beautiful thing to do in August, and we did it for our anniversary. But that is some pretty practical advice. Just keep in mind that if you do celebrate your anniversary, if your partner wants to go backpacking, that's one thing. But
Is it too late to change the date?
Nope, deposit's paid. That's fine. I'm also equally as comfortable with going to a beach for my anniversary.
Oh, yeah.
So we could find a nice middle ground.
Do you have any other relationship-based questions? I think that was the bulk of mine.
I can segue back when the time fits, but I think this one fits in with the SOS chat.
Yeah, sure. This is something that I personally haven't been anticipating for a long time. I think I even asked you about it the last time you were here, and it was too theoretical, and it's no longer theoretical. What's your take on the iPhone's new SOS satellite texting feature?
Well, I just want to say I'm glad that we got out of that relationship
We'll be
segment
back.
without.
We'll
be back.
We're not out of the woods until the podcast is done.
He's regretting messaging us.
So this is coming. It's here, and there's going to be more. So it's only a matter of time before Android phones have similar capabilities. The smartphone has been great at replacing things. So the satellite communicator is now on the list of things that it is trying to replace. I think there's an argument for still having a dedicated device, just as that like extra insurance of like, well, if your phone goes down, now your satellite messaging goes down. Whereas if you have a standalone inReach or a standalone Zoleo, you still have some buttons to press.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's an argument for that, but I mean, let's answer this question. When was the last time your phone went down completely on a backpacking trip?
Zach?
This year, yeah.
Would you like to take this one?
Yeah, I was doing a loop in the Weminuche Wilderness and was in a boulder field trying to get to the summit of a 14er. And I just had my phone stupidly like sitting in the front of a pocket, and it just fell out in the boulder field.
Oh God!
Did you see the news story recently about a lady that was trapped upside down?
Yes, I did.
Because she was chasing after her phone. That's
that
exactly
could've
what
been
happened
you.
to me. Yeah, I went down to try to chase my phone, and in the process of like my lower half being like submerged between boulders, I felt a rock shift behind my back. And like my life flashed before my eyes in that very moment. So I got out. That was the end of my phone.
Okay.
But yeah, that was the first
Okay.
time in many thousands of miles of
Yeah.
backpacking where my phone completely bit the dust.
Yeah. So and my phone, knock on wood, has never gone out. Like it's been. I don't remember the last time it ran out of batteries. I don't remember the last time I dropped it and it broke or something like that. And the phones nowadays they're very like environmentally protected. 2 years ago, one of our guides, Scott Christie, found an iPhone in the Escalante River, and he noticed it because as he was walking past it must have picked up his motion, and it turned on.
Wow.
So he like reaches down into like 1.5 feet or 2 feet of water and like finds this person's phone.
Wow.
Manages to track him down. So like I mean that thing was underwater for like hours, days, weeks. I don't know.
It's the
Damn.
original iPhone.
Yeah. So like they're pretty good against water and then if you have a case on it, they're pretty resistant to getting dropped too. And then if you have a decent enough battery pack, like you're probably not going to run out of juice. So that's a risk because you can end up in that situation. But I think that the key thing for people back home, it's the same conversation that we have with satellite messengers. It's like, hey, I'm going on this trip. You are not allowed to get nervous until 24 hours after I'm supposed to be out. Like that's still, and I think that they're going to have a hard time messaging that because this is a whole new group of people that are suddenly going to have satellite access.
Mm-hmm.
I think the conversation among backpackers we've been having this for a long time of like, hey, it's really important that you tell your family and your friends that if they're expecting text messages from you, that these things are it's a piece of technology. It relies on communicating with a satellite that's like 10 miles above Earth. Don't trust it. So like, but just give me some time. Like you can't get worried until I'm supposed to be out. And you're going to have to have the same conversation when the phones have these capabilities.
Yeah. Have you field tested the iPhone feature yet?
I've been an Android person my whole life.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you?
No, because you can't just go into airplane mode and use it. You actually have to be out of airplane mode and out of service. And there have been a few times where I've been in that circumstance.
Oh, crazy. So like, and of course, and we turn our phones on airplane mode because just to prevent the battery.
Well, and literally,
So-
I went into airplane mode to test it, and it
Uh-huh.
wouldn't bring up the feature, but like it would prompt you in the iOS settings to actually teach you how to use the feature.
Okay.
So yeah, I haven't had the chance to use it in the field yet.
So you have to go find somewhere without service.
Yeah. Yeah. At least as of the time that I
Okay.
tried to test it. It might be different now, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems inevitable that.
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wonder, to your point, to having some sort of plan B, if there's going to be like a smaller, lighter, cheaper option as like a safety net, as opposed to having like an inReach, which is still a couple $100, and then like a
Oh, it's the service fee that kills you.
right.
Yeah, it's not the $300 or $200 device fee.
And they charge you
it's
to
the-
activate it and then to
Yeah.
cancel it. Like there's a
Yeah.
fee associated with
Yeah.
picking it up. Yeah.
$50 a month, whatever it is.
Right.
That's it's a subscription model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has there been any chatter as to what the expectation for the additional cost for smartphones, or is it going to be just
Well, for Apple, it's free for the foreseeable future, but that's not going to stay the case. I mean, there's
Right.
no way that they can. Apple's not going to eat the cost of satellite capability and satellite bandwidth. They're just not.
yeah?
So at some point, it will cost. I don't know how much it will be. So for backpackers, it's great because you have more options. It's going to be a lighter weight system. It could even be less. Boy, I mean, you'd have to think too that sending more than just text messages is probably like the step just beyond, right?
Yeah.
Like you're going to be sending. I mean, it's going to be awesome if you're an influencer. You can be way out in the wilderness and talking on your phone the whole time. Can't wait to encounter them.
Yeah, how far off do you speculate, or from that?
Oh, I mean, I'm not a tech guy. I mean, so you're not even seeing the technology available in Androids yet.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm not sure, like, the Pixel 9 is already out, and I don't think it has that. So you're probably waiting on, like, another iteration of the Pixel, or, like, the next generation of a Samsung Galaxy, something like one of the flagship models.
Yeah.
And then, and the photo video capability, that's going to have to wait on satellite bandwidth. Like I know, so they're using Globalstar satellites. Apple's using Globalstar, which is a little unfortunate because it would be better, I think, if they used Iridium. Globalstar historically has been the weaker of the two satellite companies. Like so Globalstar was, Spot was using Globalstar. And one of the reasons that InReach and Zoleo are like consistently better in their reception is because the Iridium network is better.
Interesting. I did not know that, but it makes sense because I use Spot on my PCT hike, and I just used the tracking feature, and I freaked the shit out of Jenna because I went like a week without picking up anything, even though I didn't run out of battery. It's just like it stopped transmitting. Yeah. Didn't realize that was...
And that situation might have changed. I just actually read that Globalstar was sending up a bunch of additional satellites to support the iPhone satellite capability. So that might change, but historically that's been the case.
So your blog used to be a hub for backpacking, hot takes,
Yeah.
and I know now you're obviously very busy with your guiding company, and it's been mostly to promote that. I know the hot takes still live inside of you.
Yeah, they do.
What's something new? What's a new juicy Skirka backpacking hot take?
Boy. So I used a single wall shelter for the first time in my life this summer. I committed to it. So Hyperlight Mountain Gear sent me the mid one. I was like, all right, I'm going to commit to this. I'm going to figure out how to do this. Because for forever I've used like a solo mid with the Nest. So yeah, it was. I know, I'm like the last to the party here. But it's. I want to just point this out. So this thing weighs 16 ounces, and it has it's very, very weather resistant, and it's like full service shelter. So it has protection from groundwater. It has protection from insects. It's a mid, so it has that wonderful weather resistance, or wind resistance and storm resistance for the weight, and it's 16 ounces. I mean, that is just, for someone who's been backpacking consistently and pretty hardcore since 2002, it is mind-boggling.
Are you saying that's light or heavy?
That's for what you're getting. That's so crazy light.
Okay.
I know that there are lighter.
I know
that there are lighter shelters out there. So you could go with a Z-Packs pocket tarp or something like that. But this shelter doesn't make a lot in the way of sacrifices. It's not made. It's made out of one of the so I think it's the 3/4 ounce per square yard fabric. So it's like a heavier DCF. It's not designed for a tiny person. So it's like a full shelter. It feels good, and it weighs 16 ounces.
So are you predominantly using a full shelter now, or do you still use a tarp pretty often as well?
Yeah, so I like to use, it's easier for me if I just have a kit that I can basically take anywhere. So basically all summer long I used, I used the same backpack, I used the same shelter, I used the same sleeping bag, the same sleeping pad, the same stove. And it didn't matter if I was in Utah or Alaska or California or Yellowstone, it just all worked. And that just makes life easy for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think through hikers or weekend warriors, definitely you are in a position to fine tune your gear, to shave that extra, half pound out of your pack. But for someone like me who's kind of all over the place, and the last thing I really want to be doing is thinking about my gear, it just makes life easy if I take stuff that works in a wide range of conditions.
So as I get older, I'm definitely maybe not even inching, footing back toward more luxurious options for my backpacking kit,
Sure,
like an
yeah.
inflatable pillow, full-length sleeping pad,
yeah.
like the works.
Yeah.
What are your backpacking
Oh,
luxuries?
I've been
nowadays?
there too, yeah. So definitely a pillow. I mean, it's just crazy to me nowadays. Like in my through hiking days, like I would sleep on my stinky shoes, with my trash shoved into a stuff sack. Like that's so crazy.
Yeah,
That is so crazy.
Yeah. Easy to do when
Like,
you're 20. Not so much.
unbelievable that at no point I just had like got up in the middle of the night and like just like had this like epiphany, like this is dumb.
Yeah,
But
not even
no.
homeless people are this pathetic. Yeah.
So yeah, that used to be on my pillow. So definitely inflatable pillow. Yeah, I've been using just the X-Lite for years now. It's kind of there's a reason it's the gold standard. And then the backpack I usually carry, it definitely has a frame in it. It has side pockets. It has hip belt pockets. Yeah, all of that. The interesting thing about I think when it comes to gear nowadays, like we definitely for years have been like plateauing and so I remember when I was on the Appalachian Trail, I met a guy who he started backpacking, it must have been in the 80s. And he had this sleeping pad. I'm looking at it, I'm like, what is that thing? He's like, this thing? He's like, back in 1983, this was high tech shit. And I just couldn't, like, it just seems like, he'd been backpacking with the dinosaurs or something. And, 20 years later, I kind of feel that same way where like the stuff that I started backpacking with, it was so bad compared to the gear that we have nowadays. But the gear has also been plateauing too. Like you're not seeing a lot of, it's very, very incremental innovation. Consider that the backpack that I used, say on like the Great Western Loop, it was a GoLite Jam, the original one. So like no hip belt pockets. It lasted the entire 7-month-long trip, 6,800 miles, and like could have kept on going. And like that was made with a 210 denier like Dyneema ripstop type of thing. Like so pack fabric was that good in 2007. Like
Yeah.
pretty marginal gains to 2024.
I had a GoLite rain jacket on the AT 2011 drink. At the time, at least to me, and I was as novice as it gets, it seemed like GoLite was cutting edge.
It was.
It had like a leg up on pretty much most of the brands.
I bet that rain gear is covered in PFAS.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was.
Well, yeah, definitely. What happened with GoLite?
Oh boy, I mean that's a whole nother episode. So GoLite was founded in the late 90s. I think like maybe 97, 98, and by Dmitry Kupinas and Kim Kupinas, a couple. Before GoLite, they were back east. Kim was working at Goldman Sachs. Coop was working for the Concord Coalition, which is like give you guys a little bit of history. Concord Coalition was played a huge role in balancing the federal budget in the mid 90s during the Clinton administration, and like we actually had like forecasted a balanced budget, which is like
science fiction now.
30 years later,
Yeah.
$1 trillion a year, even if the economy's good. But I digress. So they were looking for something different. They moved out to Boulder. They started. Coop had read. Coop like just on a whim had picked out Ray Jardine's Beyond Backpacking book out of like a library, out of like a bookshelf in a store, and like had this idea of like, hey, we could create a company off of this. Like we could revolutionize backpacking because they had been backpacking, but it's the way Coop likes to say it. So he's like, we didn't have the best gear. We had all the best gear. And they have these photos of them from their backpacking trips and like, oh my God, it's so much stuff. So they're like super, super heavy backpacks. So they were in their mid 30s at the time. They started GoLite. And I came across GoLite because for the first time in 2002, I was on the Appalachian Trail, through hiking the Appalachian Trail, and back then there were no apps, so like word spread through word of mouth and also through the journals, and I kept hearing about these two guys that were out on the trail somewhere. They were known as the Trees, and they were carrying GoLite backpacks that only weighed 1 pound. And I was like, no effing way, because my backpack, Mountain Smith Frostfire 4500, weighs 7.5 pounds empty. Okay, so like, it was just like, you couldn't even believe it. So I met these guys one night on Max Patch, and that was my first introduction to GoLight. The following summer, I came out to Boulder for a summer internship. So Kim and Coop brought me on as an intern. I actually lived with them that summer. And then, GoLight was like, I think GoLight, Kim and Coop wanted GoLight to be like the next North Face. And probably, like in hindsight, GoLight should have just been like the next Hyperlight or the next Mountain Laurel Designs. It should have kind of stayed. They didn't know at the time that lightweight backpacking would become big, but that the bulk of consumers would still walk in an REI and buy a 3-pound tent and a 5-pound Osprey backpack and a 2-pound sleeping pad, and they would still go out with like heavy, like just kind of heavy stuff. And also like just, you're always gonna come up against the human instinct to pack your fears. Like they were never gonna overcome that. So it was like, so until you have a huge backpacking market of knowledgeable, experienced backpackers, you're never going to have full adoption of lightweight backpacking. And we still will never. Because if you are new to backpacking, you have a lot of fears, and so you pack them all. So if you're fearful of being hungry, you pack a lot of food. And if you're fearful of sleeping cold, you pack like a heavy sleeping bag. And if you're fearful of bears, well, you definitely sleep in a tent, because bears cannot get into tents. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that was like early 2000s that I was with GoLight. And they wanted to be like the next North Face, but so they kind of just got out over their skis with just their ambitions and what the market was willing to support. They were also stuck in a tough retail climate where the outdoor retailers were struggling, and as like more online merchants came into being, or as our buying habits changed from brick and mortar to online. And also like there's a lot of concentration in the outdoor industry. Like, so there used to be small little boutique, like Neptune mountaineering shops mm-hmm. in every, like in a lot of towns. In every outdoor town they kind of had one, right? So GoLight sort of struggled to get into those because it wasn't a Patagonia, it wasn't a North Face, it wasn't a Columbia. But then it kind of didn't figure out until kind of too late that they just should have been online. So, yeah.
So they overextended. Didn't they reappear after they went bankrupt?
They did. They reappeared as My Trail Company.
Right.
So Coop tried to bring back just like the classics. So the GoLight Malpace rain jacket, which you probably had.
Yeah. And
the GoLight Jam backpack, and a couple of other like token items, but he kind of struggled to get that off the ground too.
I ran in my vintage GoLight jacket just this morning.
Yeah.
And actually, also funny, Kim Kupanis officiated our wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
Huh.
Yep. I still have. I'm trying to think if I still have. I still have my like bomber, like I'm going to the Arctic in the winter parka is a GoLight. I still have it because it was like it was that good at the time. It's still that good now. Yeah, I think I've worn out anything else that I had of theirs.
Yeah, we should do a series on like the rise and fall of some of these outdoor brands, because
sure.
like Vask went down recently.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea.
Yeah,
I didn't know
you should, if you were serious. Like, I have Coop's number.
Yeah,
it would actually make for a fascinating podcast.
Yeah, sure.
Because he also like. I'm not sure if this room is big enough for Coop's personality or maybe his ego.
Yeah, sweet.
So,
love it.
Yeah, it would be a great podcast.
Cool. Would love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Back to the love stuff. I mentioned this before we started recording, but I do think it's a cool topic to get into, because I think something interesting that we have not talked about in the almost full 7 years of Backpacker Radio. Well, let me jump back. We've talked a lot to people that are in couples and relationships, our Valentine's Day episodes, just couples that come on, especially even as Zach started having kids, about what happens when you get to the point in life where you have a kid and you still want to backpack, and how do you make that work, and what's the dynamic there, and offering tips to future parents and that sort of thing. However, in this day and age, there's a lot of people that just choose not to have kids, and they don't want to for one reason or another, or they can't. And you guys being a child-free couple is something that we haven't really dived into in terms of how do you make the decision that maybe this doesn't fit in with our lifestyle and this isn't for us, and what does life look like going that route instead? And I think that'd be really cool for people to hear about.
I think Amanda and I are both looking at each other like, ooh, like who wants to go first? I don't want to go first. I'm gonna say that I've been doing more talking, so I'm gonna let Amanda go first. Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, the just real hard truth of it is that it was pretty evident early on that this was something he was passionate about. This was his career. He was my person, and fitting a child into that where I would be a single parent a huge chunk out of the year just really wasn't in the cards. But also, to be fair, I having children wasn't there was no sense of urgency there for me. I was pretty on the fence about it anyway, and so I don't know. I mean, other people, of course, you make this work. You're going the person going on trips, if they're not doing it together, it's not for weeks and all summer long, and so it's of course manageable. But I don't know how that would even have been a reality.
You would have been raising a kid alone a lot.
We can't even have a dog.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
We have cats.
Yeah, and I think in my case, so Amanda and I met when I think I turned 30 the first spring we were together. So I was 30 years old, and I, let's see, that would have been 2000. So for like the previous 8 years of my life, and basically my entire adult life, I only was basically just a hiker. Like there was nothing else going on. So like, between 6 and 9 months a year, I was backpacking, and I was like, whatever I was doing when I wasn't backpacking was just in between time for the next trip. So it was, I think, also tough for us. Like it was very tough at 30 to go like, okay, well, I have found a woman that I'm pretty interested in her. Like, wow, I'm actually gonna move in with you for the summer in your tiny little 600 square foot apartment in Denver's Highlands. And then I'm actually gonna buy a house, and we're gonna move in together. Like that was, I was already in my early 30s by the time I sort of entered my adulthood. We kind of end up a little bit running out of time. Typical, like, okay, I'm the guy to blame. I waited. I spent too long messing around. I think that for us too, there were some hard years for us in our probably the years where it would have been like, hey, if we're gonna do this kind of needs to happen now. Like we were struggling at the time. So, so now Amanda is she's older than I am, and I'm 43. So it's like we're figuring out what life looks like. Like we're settling in, and there definitely are times when we're life would be better with kids. Times when we say that, so the holidays are coming up, for example, or we just had Halloween. Halloween as a kidless couple, it's pretty miserable, especially we live in an older neighborhood in Boulder, and it's almost depressing. We
had a few trick-or-treaters,
and they were adorable, and we would run to the front door to see them.
Watching out the window, hoping a few more would come up.
Yeah.
But
and the Christmas holidays are similar, and we don't have, neither of our families, or the center of the world for my family is Boston, and Amanda's family is from northern Michigan. So that makes it tough.
But I would also say in some cases, having kids, I know probably the theme is, like you said, walking people through, giving them suggestions on how to make it work so that one person can be gone and someone else stays back with the kids. Having kids is the great part of that, because then that person isn't alone. They're back with the kid. And so it's this, give and take. And so for couples who have the opposite issue that we do, which is, well, how do we make this work with kids? I would say to whoever is, whichever of the partners is the one out doing the hiking and the one that's back with the kids, there are some days where I would rather have that. You've got your people back there. You're not with you. You're not alone. And so even though it's maybe tough to navigate or to orchestrate all of the details of how long are you going to be gone, when are you getting back, there's definitely a benefit to having them there. Yeah.
Have you ever discussed possibly adoption?
Oh, that's a great question.
I don't think we have.
We really haven't.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, we really haven't.
I think you're just in the last couple of years. This is like probably maybe not in the last couple of years. Probably like I would say almost like just this year is like the first time where we probably feel stable enough.
Mm-hmm.
So we just finished up a big home renovations. We had been living. Let's see, how long were we in the townhomes for? In the townhome
11 years.
Yeah, 11 years. We were in a townhome in Boulder, and like it was a cute little place. It took really good care of us. But like it's not necessarily like a family setup.
Mm-hmm.
So we bought a single family home in Boulder, not far away, and that's a totally different place. It's slab on grade, 2,900 square feet, 4 bedrooms. We could definitely have like raise a child there.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, we just talk about how one of the rooms is now the kitten nursery.
We're obviously crazy.
We have
crazy about our
and
kids.
Esmeralda's apartment.
Mm-hmm.
How many cats?
Just 2.
Just.
Yeah. So yeah, but I think it was both. It was the lifestyle and the career that just would have been really tough, but also, again, to be fair, it was not something that either one of us, I think, we made our decisions and we were okay with it.
Yeah. Yep.
What are the pros of a dink lifestyle? Because that's a term that's like
Yeah.
all over the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well,
Mhm.
the term's been around for a long time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The big advantage is that you will you don't have the expense.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have so that's like probably like something that you could measure. That's the expense. So I mean, Zach can tell you.
Oh, it's,
Kids are expensive.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
We were actually just saying today. So we figured out our cats eat about $10 of food a day. It's $300 a month,
Mm-hmm.
and cats are way less expensive than kids. So that
Zach's like loosening his shirt.
It's getting hot in here.
I'll tell you off air how much we spend in just healthcare.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
out. It's a number
Yeah.
that'll make you throw up.
Yeah.
So and then depending on what your kids decide to do for college and how you want to treat that too. I mean, college is an enormous expense. So my sisters, so they both have 2 kids each, and I'm certain that they're not going to be putting their foot down and saying no guys, you're going to go to UMass Amherst. No, those kids are probably going to go to the best school that they can get into. That'd be my guess. That's by the time I went to a good school, and nowadays that good school costs about $80,000 a year. That's huge.
And that's just tuition. Yeah.
Huge.
Doesn't it
Well,
count?
that's that's room and board, all expenses, but $80,000 a year that your parents are putting up.
Yeah.
So, interestingly, Amanda and I had a appointment today with our financial advisor, and our numbers look a lot different because we don't have kids than
Right.
if we did. Yeah.
Did you guys ever get shit in your 30s from family or friends because they're seeing you in this adventurous lifestyle and they're waiting for you to make an announcement and settle down and you haven't yet?
You speak first.
No, I know, because I think most people. Well, that's a good. I can't.
I think your parents probably would have been pretty delighted if we'd had kids.
They would have, but I think by that point too, I had had some conversations with them that this probably wasn't going to happen. That we never strung anyone along. We never, the two of us together, we had made this decision. It wasn't something that we were wishy-washy about or going back and forth on. And so when I said yes, I knew that this was probably not going to happen. And again, well, that maybe sounds sad for some people, but also as an individual, I didn't have that urgency. I didn't have that, because I could have walked away from him. He made it very clear, this is not something that I'm probably ever going to do. So we made the decision, and I think you're always going at your human beings. You're always going to have little twinges of what if, or what if we had done that, what if we had just had one? Do we have any regrets? I think it's totally fine and normal to maybe have those moments. But for the most part, I think we made the right decision and probably what is best for a child, too. He wouldn't be able to do what he's doing, I don't think. If we had decided to have a kid, I think that he would not be Andrew Skirka and he would be a financial planner himself or something corporate.
That's probably true. Yeah, that would have been hard for us. I mean, in my case, like, my parents would have been delighted if we'd had kids, but my sisters both having two, like, they took the pressure off.
Yeah, that helps a lot.
I will say, for the couples out there or the individuals out there who are like, should I have kids or don't? Like, in addition to the expense thing, like, one of the downsides of not having children is that if you don't live near your parents, they aren't going to come out to see you that often.
Yeah.
If we had
no
kids,
incentive.
We're lucky if our parents visit us once a year.
I'll use this opportunity because I know that they listen to these to give them shit. It's been 8 years since they've come to Denver.
I mean, in fairness, like, the pandemic was tough,
Yeah.
but if you don't have kids, it's not going to get better.
Yeah.
But I tell you, if you end up having kids, they're
You'll see
definitely
them.
going to be
Well,
definitely
it's
going to
so
get on
funny.
a plane and get out here.
So I do plan on having kids, but it's so funny because we were home for June, or no, it was when we were home for the Teton Crest Trail, or not Teton Crest, the Northville Placid Trail, where I was like, did you catch that thing my dad said? Was it you that was near me or Elise? Where my dad just something about kids came up. My dad made a passing comment. He's like, we gave up on that ship long ago.
Yeah.
I was
You're
like,
I'm young.
I'm 32. Mom had me when I was 38. Like, what do you mean you gave up on that ship long ago? But I think they see you going on hikes and doing all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it also probably resonates a lot with people in the field of long distance hiking because you reach a point where it comes to your career, it comes to having a family or settling down in any sort of way where you look at these two paths. And it's, do I do the through hike next year or do I try to find, this route that looks like the white picket fence?
Yeah. Yeah. So, young people, they still get hold of me every once in a while for advice. And one of the things I usually tell them is like there's plenty of time to be an adult. But it's like, basically that's the if you have an itch to do something in your 20s that is really important to you, go do it.
Yeah.
But man, I mean, Zach, you will say, and you're probably about to find out too, it sounds like in a couple of years, but man, once you become an adult, it's really hard to go back, and it's really hard also to still maintain that I'm Andrew Skirka. I'm the guy who walked from Quebec to Washington State, and I'm Andrew Skirka, the guy who walked around the American West, and I'm the guy, who walked around the Yukon, and I was in National Geographic. And nowadays, it's I'm 43 years old. I'm a proud pet parent of two wonderful four-legged children, Esmeralda and Luxor, and I own a home that we renovated, and I'm proud to go out. I love going out in the yard and picking weeds out of our clover lawn. Okay, and it can be a little hard to man, I'm not as sexy as I used to be. I'm not but it's okay to close that chapter a little bit. Say you know what, I did all those things. I'm really glad I did them. Those were awesome years. I'll never ever regret that. But there are also other things in life to experience, and you can't have it all.
Totally. Yeah.
So just kind of dedicate, and when you're in that moment, I think the analogy of we're in our lives, we end up on these waves, and you never know when that wave is going to start crashing and when the ride is going to be over. But that is life, where you're on this wave, and you just need to in those moments just be thankful for what you are doing. So I am thankful. I'm not sure in my 20s appreciate. I thought maybe it'd be a forever thing, but I probably should have appreciated a little bit more just how awesome the things I was doing were.
Yeah, but at least you did those things.
At least I did those things.
Because there's a lot of people that they get into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt because of college.
Mm-hmm.
They feel compelled, whether it's intrinsic or external pressures, to go pay off that debt, and then get stuck in a career. Mm-hmm. And then they have kids, they don't ever get to do
Yeah.
any of the things that we sit
Yeah.
and talk about on this
Yeah.
podcast all the time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
go
those-
be stupid when you're 20.
Those get the trail names of 65 and alive,
Yeah.
now or never, do or die,
Totally.
just retired. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I feel so fortunate that I got to scratch that itch so much throughout my life. And I think it allowed me to be a better parent because I got to go do those
Yeah,
things.
you don't resent it.
Sure.
No, definitely not.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. Like I've just, as I became a business owner and a homeowner and a husband, I didn't regret like suddenly like feeling those trappings. It was like, you know what? Like I've done those things. Like I'm also okay with this. Like some of the, like, I know one of my favorite things, this sounds really weird for someone who is known like as this like, backpacker and this big mountain guide kind of thing. One of the things I love doing in the summer when I'm home is I go in the backyard with the cats and I just sit out there and listen to the birds and just watch my two cats get totally checked into their surroundings. And I love that I have like everything in the four corners of my property, like it's ours. Like I love that. Like, man, I mean, if you could play that clip and then put it on a DeLorean back to 2007 and play it for me.
Who the hell is this guy?
I'd be like, who is that guy? He
Yeah.
sucks.
Yeah.
Sell out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's okay.
I'll give you one more perk that I think you're probably overlooking or not, but you mentioned the benefit of being a dink as being financial, and that's very true. But just to put in perspective, on the weekend, I have to ask my wife permission if I can go to the gym for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, your level of freedom, especially
Yes.
with multiple kids, but true with even one kid, whether it's real or perceived, like you just feel guilty leaving one parent, especially during the stressful times. It just changes your world view so much. Your freedom is different.
We
Yeah.
talked about this just this weekend. Yeah, because we were saying that, like, yeah, if you have kids, like we're talking about my sisters, like basically like, every minute of your weekend is scheduled.
Yeah. No, that's a real thing. So
And meanwhile, it's like, we could get up at 7, we could get up at 8, we could, leave for a run at 8:30, we could leave for a run at 11.
Yeah.
We could spend the entire afternoon watching Netflix,
Which we don't.
Yeah, which we don't.
Yeah.
Or, picking weeds, or
you can go out to dinner. Yeah, there's a lot of things. Not shit talking,
Yeah.
being a parent. I love it, but there's certainly a lot more benefits to the dink lifestyle than financial.
That's fair.
No.
Oh, no, you go
I was just gonna say, but like, I've never, I'm out with a lot of parents, and usually they will, because this topic comes up, and usually like the sort of the consensus that or the thing that I will hear a lot of is, raising kids was the hardest thing I ever did in my life, but it was also like the most like rewarding.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those things. It reminds me of what my 12th grade English teacher, Mrs. Krause, said. Basically, like, what you get out of this course will be directly correlated to the amount that you put into it.
Yeah.
So kids require a lot of input, but you should also get a lot out of
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I'm already sad about how old my toddler is. Like, he's 4 years old, and he's like no longer in like the cute baby stage. Like, he's becoming a little boy, and like even that, with how stressful it's been, like it makes me sad to think that he's past that point. Yeah, it definitely changes your perception on time pretty significantly.
My closing question on the topic is, let's say there are people that are listening to this episode that might be on the fence, but leaning towards not having kids, but are also in that age of life where they're feeling a lot of societal pressure. What advice or words of wisdom or little nuggets would you shed to them?
Oh my.
Yeah, it's
I don't know. I mean, our situation, again, ours is unique, but I mean, kids in general, or kids while also trying to do backpacking and outdoor rec and things that they love that require them to be away. And
They're outdoorsy in this area, like that we hike in, and they are leaning towards not wanting kids, but they're feeling like, the societal push to have them, but they kind of know they don't want them.
oh gosh,
From that perspective of like, hey,
Definitely
we
don't
got
have
don't
kids.
have them. Yeah.
because you're probably not going to be a good parent if your primary reason is external pressure.
That was going to be my thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you end up having kids, like, just commit to your path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you decide to have kids, like, you made that choice, like, go with it, and it'll be really tough, but it could be like really awesome too. If you don't have kids, I think, like, in some respects, I think that's actually like almost the harder path, because it's not actually just the societal pressure, but like I look at my sisters and they have this thing that these things that they have to take care of and nurture and like sort of constantly be managing. It gives them something. Like there is like that is the structure, like the
It's the glue.
Like it's the center of their universe. And if they and their partners don't like work together on it, they have to. They have no choice. They have to work together on it. And I think like the difficult thing about not having kids is like it's much more easy for us to like kind of go a different way and be too independent of each other and not, because we have to focus. The only thing that we have is us as a couple. So what do we want to do if we're not going to have kids? Who are we going to be? Like we're not just going to be parents. Like that's being parents is like everyone kind of knows what parents look like and sound like and talk like, and what does a couple without kids look like? I think that's almost harder to figure out.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective, especially, this might be just a small sample size, but we've got some friends in our group that don't have kids, and like everyone had kids all at the same time, and I've noticed that those relationships have struggled. I mean, all relationships have their challenges, right? But I wonder how much of it is what you're describing, is like the parents have this rallying cry to be parents, and these other couples probably feel a little bit outcast because
Oh, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And they probably resent you for having kids. They're like, well, yep, Zach and his wife, they were good friends until they had kids, and now we never see them.
Yeah, I mean,
and when we do see them, they just want to talk about their kids.
right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it might also go the other way too. Like they might not have had kids because the relationship was on the rocks. Like I could see.
Sure.
Yeah. But no, it's hard, and like we still work at it. Like for us, we've tried to kind of create a life together. It definitely involves two cats. It involves a home that we like, that we enjoy being in. But it's not without its challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you guys being open and sharing about it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're very real. The just quickly say on that topic. So the people that I most enjoy hiking with are the people who are real and like show vulnerability. Like everyone has their issues, right? Like has like a history, and the trips were so one of the things I go around at night, and I ask each person, they're in their shelter, I'll go like, hey, what's the thing that's bothering you the most right now? Because then you get real answers, as opposed to like how you doing? And they just thought like, oh, I'm fine. Yep, great day, loved it. You ask people what's bugging them the most, and suddenly they're like, I really miss my kids, or like something that someone said kind of didn't feel right, or even just like I have a heel blister that I didn't tell you about, despite you telling me that you need to tell me what blister is. Yeah, so yeah, I've kind of have tried. I think Amanda and I both have tried to just be a little bit more real and open, rather than just covering things up.
What's the most common answer that you get when you ask that question?
They fall into categories of basically like emotional, mental, or physical. So like I have like my hip is bothering me a little bit, or I'm really struggling with being the slowest person in the group, or I came on this trip because my father died 6 months ago, and like I needed a little bit of an escape and go like clear my mind a little bit. Yeah, it's pretty remarkable, the things, and you guys know this, like you bond with people on backpacking trips. Like,
Yeah.
I spend just a couple days with people on backpacking trip, and I know them better than their coworkers do that they've been working together for years.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
crazy.
Yeah. You get past the small talk very
Yeah.
quickly.
I mean, yeah, because you're like by the first morning, you're asking people how their poop was. Right?
On the subject, I want to talk about, obviously, the 2025 trips. So where do we stand currently? This is going to come out December 2nd.
Yeah.
Have a little bit of wiggle room if need be. What trips are still open? I guess what do you
Yeah,
want people to know?
all of them will still be open. So yeah, by December 2nd. So registration, right now we're saying that registration will start accepting applications on December 9th.
Okay.
And then for the first 2 weeks, we have an open application period where any of the applications we receive, we just treat them equally. Because the thing in our program that we try to do, like, so you would, with a lot of other organizations, like, you would apply for a very specific trip. It's like, okay, well, this is the 5-day lake route in Yosemite, and it starts on this day and ends on this day, and you would sign up specifically for that trip and put your credit card in, whatever. We don't take just the first 8 paying people. So we take in all those applications, we review them, and then we try to match them with other sort of like-abled applicants. So we try to put all of our moderate hikers who want to do session 1 in Utah, we put them in a group, and we put all of the high fitness people who want to do the technical canyoneering trip in session 1, we put them all together. So it's kind of a big process, and it helps to have a couple hundred applications where we can pool people and make all the trips, both have the trips full and also make sure that the groups look good on paper.
Mm-hmm.
So similar fitness levels, similar technical comfort. We always try to gender balance them. We'll try to we'll even look at the ages and try to make sure that we don't put a 27-year-old in with a bunch of 60-year-olds. So that will happen. So the application deadline is December 22nd. That's the open application, the end of open application, and then we'll start inviting people on trips the following week, so the week after Christmas, and then we'll finish up in the first week of January. And then if you don't get in at that point, we'll still have spots available, but you might have to be a little flexible.
Yeah. I know you always have awesome guides. Give me a few guides that you want to shout out here.
Oh, sure. So I'll start with co-director Katie Gerber.
Yeah.
Who I know she has a trail name, but I actually don't know what it is.
Gas.
Yeah, probably something food related,
Oh.
right? I know she's big into the paleo diet.
Yeah. No, she's gluten-free, but I don't actually know what it is. She's Katie.
Katie's the best.
Yeah. So Katie's
Salty.
wonderful. Salty, that's what it
Yeah.
is. Right. So Katie's been co-director. This will be her 3rd season now? Yeah. And she's just key to this program now. She right now is actually down in the Grand Canyon. She just yesterday finished up. She was in 2023. She and a partner had hiked almost the full length of the Grand Canyon on the north side, but they had to he got ill one day, so they had to skip a section. So they went back and finished that up, and then she's going to do a 7-day canyoneering trip with a couple of other people down there. So that's Katie. She gets out a lot. She gets out so much. She told me at the beginning of her year her goal was to hike 365,000 vertical feet of gain for the year.
Whoa.
And this is someone who works, almost every day, and
Damn.
she lives in Salida, so she's got access to the Saywatch.
Yeah.
But there isn't a weekend that goes by where it's we get on the phone on Monday morning and it's hey Katie, how was your weekend? She's oh yeah, on Saturday we climbed this and on Sunday we did this. And she's how was your weekend? I'm yeah, Amanda and I we went to the West Elm store to look for a new coverlet. Yeah. So that's Katie. She's fantastic. She's and then let's see. So some of the other really seasoned guides. We have Scott Christie. Scott Christie was a Knowles instructor for 20 years, and he gets out a lot too. Scott's to the point where he doesn't even put an out of office on his email because the assumption is just he's out.
Yeah.
So Scott he just finished up guiding a river trip in the Grand Canyon. When I talked to him this week, and I'm what are you up to? He's oh yeah, so I just got back from a river trip, and this weekend Allie and I, his partner, we're gonna go. It's just entering prime season here in St. George, so we're gonna go do some canyoneering. So that's him. Jeff Wall is another seasoned guide, another longtime Knowles guy. He lives up outside of Lander, Wyoming. He is he's he's remarkable. He's like he knows all the birds. He knows all of like the prehistoric or like like native history in southern Utah. He knows all about the wildlife in Yellowstone. He's really, really good, and he's also like just a fantastic person. He and his like cool thing about him, he and his wife Nikki, they built their house outside of Lander. Super cool. I can't imagine.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, like that, and they're still together. Yeah. And then let's see, who else do we have in the group? Michaela Osler is another. She's a rising star in our program, so she's based out of Albuquerque. I'm sure she has a trail name too because she's a triple crowner. She's held fastest known times in the Colorado Trail. And Michaela is she's a just super like bubbly personality. She really knows her stuff. She's come a long way as a she started as an excellent guide and she's only gotten better. So she's a former she used to teach. She has her master's, so she was teaching like undergraduates, so she has that teaching background, and then she's just super knowledgeable in the outdoors. And then maybe to round things out, our two most senior guides, we have Christy Rosander, Lady on a Rock, who like I'm always embarrassed with the first time I see Christy for the season because I'm like, Christy, how many nights have you spent on the ground so far? And it'll be like April, and she's like, let me see, like, I don't know, like 30. And this is like, she's a grandmother, she's married, like she's a former elementary school teacher. And then our other most senior guide is Brian Robinson, Flying Brian Robin, the first person to hike the Calendar Triple Crown, one of 20 Barkley Marathon finishers. Brian, quick story about Brian. So my sister this would have been in like 2001. Yeah, it was 2001. I was still in college. She mails me a tear out of a Sports Illustrated adventure story about Brian Robinson through hiking the Calendar Triple Crown. And I was just blown away by this guy who's out there with like 8-pound base weight, hiking like 30 miles a day. At the time, it just seemed like in 2001, that seemed unfathomable. Yeah, Brian Robinson, like total barrier breaker.
Where's he based out of?
He's in Monterey.
Okay.
So that's like a half dozen. We have 25 of them. And kind of the list keeps going. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Are you still doing the scholarship program?
We still have a scholarship program, yep. So scholarship programs, it's a financial need scholarship. So if someone's like, wow, I'd love to get on one of those trips, but the finances aren't quite there, then yeah, we have some spots available for that.
Awesome. And what's the website where people go to sign up?
Yeah, just search for my name, Andrew Skirka. It's all there.
Cool.
Yeah. One little more plug. So usually with all of our trips, like in the past, we've done our trips with sort of like people apply, we put them together into like abled groups, and then we put together an itinerary that makes sense for them. But this year we have a couple of trips where we're picking. This is like old school Skirka. Like it's my trip, and you guys are going to be on it. So we're it's like a little like kind of signature series. So we have in southern Utah, we're doing an 11-day overland route. So that's Steve Allen's famous route through the Escalante watershed. It starts at the Highway 12 bridge. It'll go all the way down to like Coyote Wash. So that's Utah. In Alaska, I'm leading an 11-day trip up in like the northeast corner of Gates of the Arctic National Park. So I've never led an 11-day trip before. You know, like the boss needs to be around more, I guess. So I've never yet. I'm like thrilled. And like the 11-day trips, you know, they're on one hand they're tough because like it's a lot of food. But like if you have 11 days of food in your backpack and you're in like the Brooks Range of Alaska, there's so many places you can go. Like you're out there for so long. It's like this super immersive wilderness experience. Yeah. So that's Alaska. And then in California we have one of the signature trips is going to be a 7-day peak bagging trip. So kind of like class 3, class 4 peaks, like focus specifically on peaks. So not just like high route type stuff, but like bagging peaks. And that's a little bit smaller group size. It's going to be 6 people. We have we're not exactly sure who's going to be guiding that yet. We've got plenty of options there. And then we're also offering a Kings Canyon High Basin Route 11-day trip. So I think that one group, usually we can fill 2 11-day trips, and one group is going to do the middle fork of the of the Kings River, so it's the middle fork of the Kings River, and the other group will do the south fork of the Kings River, so we'll stay like high up in the watershed. Then we move to Yellowstone, and the route that we talked about earlier, so it starts at the north side of Yellowstone Lake in Pelican Valley, and we go over into the Lamar, and we do this like super cool like off-trail route through the upper Lamar drainages, and then we finish the trip by coming across the Mirror Plateau. So that's a 7-day trip. We're also offering another 11-day trip to the Trident Plateau and Thoroughfare River, which is the most remote point in the continental U.S. Super cool place. And then we finish our trip in West Virginia, where we don't have any signature trips, but we are offering in West Virginia an all-women's trip and a 55-plus trip. And we're offering those trip types in a couple of other locations too. So,
That's cool.
Yeah.
What's the shortest trip that you offer?
We offer 3-day trips. So they're 3-day intro-level trips designed for ideally those people have been on an overnight trip, but we also take day hikers, car campers. Yeah.
Do you ever guide the 3 days?
Love guiding the 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sweet.
I mean, there are a few times in life you get the opportunity to be on someone's first backpacking trip.
Yeah.
It's very fun.
Yeah.
And there's just so much to share with them.
Yeah. One last thing before we wrap it here. This is the Kumo question. Shout out to Gossamer Gear. Use code SnuggleBug for 20% off shelters at gossamergear.com. Do we do one question for both of them or two questions?
One each.
Yeah, okay. So inside this Gossamer Gear Kumo is a assortment of balls. You're going to grab a ball.
From my sack.
It's like a fortune cookie.
It's like a little
of
fortune
question.
cookie and an Easter egg.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
What is the one skill you wish you had mastered?
That's a good one.
Oh, for me, that would be playing the piano.
Ooh.
Are you musical?
I would love to be, but I would love to have learned how to play the piano.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's great because we've been together for 13, 14, 15 years, and I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So mine is, what's the weirdest job you've ever had? Gosh, I don't know if I've ever had like a weird one. I mean, I definitely did. Oh, actually, I do remember. So it was my first job. It wasn't a weird job, but just I couldn't think of anything worse. I worked at it's called Fantasy World, and it was like an indoor amusement park. It used to be an old indoor skating rink called Star Wheels. So yeah, it was called Fantasy World, and basically I would just, I was in high school. I would sit there, and these little kids would get on a ride, and I would turn the button, and it would go around. And there was no timer on it, so whenever I felt like the ride should be over,
That's scary.
I'm not exaggerating. I had almost the exact same job. The place was called Dino Rex. I'm like, I'm buckling kids into the seats and pushing the button.
Totally.
That's funny.
Oh man, that was. Oh, and this goes to show. So I remember when I had that job, I was reading. I remember that summer I was reading a book by Peter Lynch, who all of you guys look at me like you have no idea who Peter Lynch is. Peter Lynch was like a big time mutual fund manager for Fidelity back in he ran like the largest mutual fund at the time. So yep, I was clearly on my way to somewhere different.
I was hoping you were going to say you got into the book and you forgot to push the off button.
Oh, there actually was that time where I literally remember that. Like, a mom was like, "Can you end the ride?" Because I think even the kids at that point were like, "This is boring. We're just going around in a circle."
That's awesome. Andrew, Amanda, thank you so much
Thank
for joining us
you.
here on Backpacker Radio. Another marathon episode. Thank you for dealing with the onslaught of questions. This was a ton of fun. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
To the Trek propaganda, Chaunce and I are both laughing reading.
I laughed because I thought you pushed record, started laughing, and then pushed stop.
Oh,
That's
no.
why I was laughing.
Oh, did you look at the title of this article?
No, not yet.
This is by Katie Jackson. Hiker trying to retrieve drop phone spends 7 hours wedged upside down in a crevice. That's funny because that was almost me. If you listen to the Women Choo Choo Loop episode. I almost killed myself doing exactly that. But this poor young lady spent 7 hours wedged in rocks, and if you want the full story, head to the link in the show notes because Katie Jackson wrote an awesome article on this exact story. And I'll touch on this other one briefly. Again, another Katie Jackson. This is CDT through hike stats. Showers make through hikers sad, and other data-driven insights from the trail. I didn't realize that Katie had a background in statistics, but the graphs in her piece here were really stand out. So we're going to have to find a way to utilize more of this skill set because in addition to being obviously a great writer, she's been writing for us for a long time now. The charts in this one are next level, and she has one plot which is mood over time with rainy days shaded, so you can see how her mood correlated with rain, and it's kind of exactly what you'd expect, I guess.
Well, I also love that the mood is scaled on a half-point system from 1 to 4.
Yeah.
And I don't know if 4 is good or bad.
I would assume higher is better.
You think? There's a lot more higher than lowers, so that would make sense.
Yeah.
She was pretty happy on rainy days.
This plot tracks my recorded mood across all 148 days of my hike with rainy days highlighted in blue. A rainy day only means it rained for some point in the day for any amount of time. So I guess that kind of skews it a little bit. But despite Colorado being the best part of the trail, it did have the lowest average mood ranking, a 3 out of 4. If you listen to the podcast, you'll probably get some better insight on that. But yeah, Katie's the best, and you will enjoy this piece. Question of the day. What's your biggest, this is yours. Mm-hmm. What's your biggest low stakes conspiracy theory?
Yes. And the inspo for this was a TikTok I saw where a guy stated his, which was that he doesn't actually believe Family Feud polls 100 people. Because he was like, realistically, I don't know anyone who's been polled for Family Feud.
Ooh, this is a perfect Polly setup moment. You put him on a tee because there's a amazing It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia episode where they're on Family Feud, and Charlie always has like the craziest answer. The rest of the gang gets pissed off at him because I forget examples of the questions, but like just something that is completely off the wall, incorrect. And he'll say his answer and they get mad at him, and it'll just ding 1 each time. He was one of the people being polled for the questions and also answering the question. You have to watch the episode. It'll be much more funny. I'm sure Polly will pull the appropriate clip at the end of this episode. But
okay.
Yeah.
My low stakes conspiracy theory, and this is very driven from me spending most of my days at a desk, is when you're, and this is also probably like a corporate world thing, but when you're on a Zoom that has a ton of people on it and it's not just like a team meeting, like sometimes they'll be structured where there's speakers or presenters and you don't even have like the camera and the mute button in the bottom corner. It's just not an option. Like you are not on this to talky talk. I always have a Post-it note next to my desk that I just put over the camera screen because I'm convinced that they can still see you. Even if your green light's not on your camera on the computer, even if you don't have an option to turn it off, even if it's like says it's off, part of me is still like, but what if? Like today I was on our earnings call. That's like a legit thing. Yeah. Post-it note on the, like, is the person leading the earnings call for the quarter going to be looking at Juliana Chauncey in her desk? No. Yeah. Was my Post-it note on the computer? Yes.
Even if it's not someone at your company, certainly someone has access to that camera at all times. I think that's a pretty well-established fact. But your conspiracy is that somebody at the company is watching you via Zoom.
Yeah, and I heard a wild story that I don't remember all the finer details of right now, but it was vaguely that someone, I think, forgot to turn off their camera and got caught having sex. And this is from like a coworker who saw it, not at this company, but at a past job they were at. Because I was telling them, I was like, here's my paranoia. And they were like, actually, funny thing about that.
That's a bold move during a work call.
Like probably like a COVID, they work from home. They didn't have a home office, so their office was their bedroom. Yeah. You know, type situation.
Sure.
But
I guess that's pretty exciting sex now that you talk about it.
You don't bounce back from that.
No.
You leave the job. you leave the
Though
company.
I would still rather have that than the Jeffrey Toobin situation where he got caught whacking off.
Oh, I didn't know that happened.
Oh yeah, a CNN reporter got fired because he was whacking off during a
To
Zoom
the
call.
Zoom?
I don't know if it was to the Zoom, but it was during the Zoom, and he thought his camera was off, and then they brought him back, and he had to address it. Just like
No
prime
need to
TV.
bring me back.
Yeah, no
No
it's-
need.
I'll go work at a Wendy's or
Yeah.
something from now on. My biggest low stakes. This I don't even know. Mine's definitely not a conspiracy theory, but I guess if we're just doing far off thoughts, is I'm a prescriber to reincarnation. I think that life is just an endless loop, and then you take new forms and beings. And I especially believe that people who die in traumatic fashion oftentimes will carry memories of that life into their next form of life, because there's a lot of instances where young kids like ages 2 to 4 have memories of a past life, and like very specific things, like they knew that they grew up in this country and that this was their last name, like odd things.
Have Leo or the twins
No.
said anything creepy?
No supernatural reincarnation pieces of evidence in the Davis household, unfortunately, but it hasn't shaken my belief in this low
What do you
stakes
think you were
conspiracy.
in a past life?
I think that I was probably a sloth.
Oh, okay. So
Just-
you didn't die in a traumatic way.
No.
Okay.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. Sloths are pretty slow. So, like, you know, if they're coming through and culling a rainforest, probably that would have been traumatic in
Yeah.
like this realm of sloth life. But sloth feels pretty right to me.
Interesting.
Yeah. What about you?
I could see myself having drowned in a past life because
That's a
I've-
nasty way to go.
I know. Well, I've also got this like sensory thing where I hate water on my face. I'm the opposite of a Neutrogena commercial.
Maybe you were
like-
a cat.
Well, when I'm in the shower, first off, I prefer baths. I'm a much cleaner person when I have access to a bathtub because my face doesn't need to be in the water. But when I'm in the shower, I have like a dry towel always within hand's reach, because if the water starts to go in my face, I need to wipe it off.
You were definitely a cat.
I cannot stand it.
There's other elements of your personality that are cat-like.
Cat-like, yeah, I could have been.
Yeah, maybe you still are
maybe
a
like
little
a big cat, maybe like a mountain lion.
Yeah.
Little lurking.
Would you vote
cougar.
for on Prop 127?
I said let them hunt the
Yeah.
mountain lions. I know we don't get political here, but I think hunting is a good thing and has a place, and that it's very regulated as is. And I think that the way that they release permits for certain animals that you would hunt are all based on science and math and what the ecosystem looks like with everything being in its checks and balances. And I think they probably are already doing it in a way that's responsible. It's not just like everyone go kill lions.
Since mountain lion hunting has been introduced in Colorado, their populations have increased and are like at a very healthy place right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think if you were to
Also-
just stop it, then
Why are we voting on it?
that would
Like
impact
let the
everything.
biology.
I don't know. I kind of like when they throw a fun thing on there. Like when we had wolves on there one time,
Yeah.
I was like, this is fun.
I am a hypocrite because I did vote pro wolf.
I was pro wolf.
But I don't know. I just feel like let the professionals make these decisions.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of stuff on there that this was my issue with it. Was some of the stuff I was like, I don't feel like I'm educated enough to be able to have a stake in this game, but I'm worried if I leave it blank. Here's a
Like the
here's a
one
low
about-
stake conspiracy theory. I was worried Garrett made fun of me because he was in and out of that voting booth, and
Yeah.
I was there for like 30 minutes reading through the packet, like doing all that. And he was like, "You took so long." I was like, "Well, I had to research some of these questions."
Oh, I spent like 2 hours.
Yeah, and he was like, you don't have to answer certain ones if you don't feel like you know. And my low stakes conspiracy theory, which might be high stakes, is I feel like if I left something blank,
They're not going to count the full
no,
ballot.
someone would fill it in with something.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I don't know. But I felt so bad. This is actually really bad. So a guy came knocking on our door that afternoon and was asking for me, and my housemate was like, "Oh no, sorry, she left. She's not here," which is great. Always answer that if someone comes looking for me. And the guy was talking to him about this bill that he was hoping that like people would vote a certain way for, which was the bartering one, like allowing them to barter something. And that was one that at the end of the test, I was like, I'm stumped on this answer because it wasn't in the book. And I felt like the way I was reading it, was that the companies could, instead of like paying overtime or instead of paying more money, could barter things like work, like days off or something. And I was like, they should get their money. So I voted no for that. And now I feel like a dummy because that guy was like, we really want this. And I was like, oh, fuck, I got to apologize to him.
I don't even remember that question, to be honest with you.
I felt so bad.
Yeah.
I was listening from around the corner, and I was like, I should have left that one blank. But, so there's your daily politics for me.
Yeah. No, I think I was more juiced up about the big cats than anything else.
I did my best.
Yeah.
With my answers.
Good.
But, yeah, big cats I voted yes for.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, that was political hour. And that's the only politics that you'll get
we
out
won't
of
do that
us.
often.
Yeah. Stupid thing of the week. We kind of foreshadowed this in the beginning, but we haven't talked about this since you've done it. Mm-hmm. It's been a month-ish.
Just under.
So you ran a marathon.
I did it. Ran a marathon is a phrase that people could find fault with because I did walk
You
a
did a
hearty
marathon.
chunk. I did a marathon. That's
Yeah.
the better term. It took me 7 hours flat on the nose, 7.00. I was trying to get the minute down, but like at that point, okay, let me walk you through it. So first off, I ran the farthest I've ever run without walking during this, which was, Did
you run the first part of it and then walk the rest, or what was your approach?
So I didn't have an approach. I just figured I'd take things as they came.
Yeah.
And I ran the first 5 miles without stopping, which
Nice.
I thought was great. But I started getting really weirded out because like mile 3, my hands went numb. And I mean, granted, you're running with T-Rex arms, but my hands went numb. And like I couldn't bend my fingers to touch them, and it felt really weird, and I was trying to bend them and they wouldn't. So then I started going like this while I was running and like trying to
It's
just
not
make
because
them...
it's cold.
No, it was like they just went numb.
Yeah. There's something about like when you get too much oxygen. I know this happens to people when they do like the Wim Hof breathing technique, that your fingers lock up.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's what you were
Well, I was
experiencing.
wiggling them while going, and that was weirding me out a bit. And I kept like thinking back to the advice I had been given by the internet, which was just walking's a trap. Don't walk. Just run slow, don't walk. And so I did that for as long as I could. And then finally my body was like, we just can't do this. We need to walk a bit. And so I did that. And the other thing that people told me not to do was not to introduce like foods or things that I haven't tested before, i.e. gels. Should have listened. The gels were gross. I ate a lot of chewy bars. But then the other thing that got weird was that...
Since you don't run, isn't literally anything that you consume untested?
Exactly. That was my mindset going in. But the other thing that was weird was that I knew that people were saying you have to eat every however much periodically to make sure that you don't run out of energy. And when I started trying to eat things like, okay, a half hour's passed, I should eat a chewy bar, I just started to feel so nauseous. Like I was going to throw up everything. And I was like, if I throw up, I'm not going to have the energy, and I need this energy, so I can't throw it up. But then I started to get really lightheaded, and then I started getting super dizzy. And then I started thinking, if I don't walk for this next bit, my knees might give out. Like, I don't think I'm going to faint in that, like, I'm unwell, but I think my body might just say no. And then people will be concerned. And I didn't want people to be concerned because I didn't want them to tell me to stop. And I knew I was fine. It's just like weird things were happening, which to me made sense because I didn't train for this thing. Weird things were going to happen. And Garrett had my car, and he had the map of the course. And the whole time we expected me to miss the cutoff. The both of us. So it was kind of like when they pack up the aid stations, Garrett will meet me at those spots and he'll have my water. And I made it to the halfway point with like 2 minutes to spare before the cutoff. So I got 13.2, 13.1 in just under 3 hours, which I thought was great. And that was where I started to kind of deteriorate. The other thing that was kind of bad, I love my topos. They're great on trails.
You ran in the pursuits?
Yes. And I didn't really think much of it until like midnight the night before. Garrett just like comes up to me. Oh, no, it was the midnight the night before. I went to take them out from the Northville Placid Trail, and I forgot that when I packed them in my suitcase, I double freezer bagged them so that they wouldn't get my stuff dirty. They were soaking wet still, and they smelled like they'd been freezer bagged in their hiker stench for a month and a half, which they had been. So that was bad. We had to dry them out. And then Garrett brought them up to me and he's like, is this what you're running in? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, there's no padding. And I was like, well, they work great. Like, I enjoy hiking in them. They hike great. And he's like, that's on a trail. I was like, yeah. And he's like, this is a road. Yeah. He's like, you need more padding. Didn't realize that. Yeah, that probably would have been good. And then probably like around mile 15 was when like people just started to think I'm out. Like, I'm out for the count. Garrett didn't think I was going to do it till mile 22, but I had my whole little posse, which was the guy in the back who collects the flags and the arrows. I saw him a couple times. I had a 5-minute where I sat down at one point, which they said beware the chair, but I did it. And Garrett was trying to encourage me not to, and I kind of bitchily was like, this isn't a question. And I just sat down. And they saw me when I was sitting, and I was like, oh, you guys caught me. And I think they kept thinking I was going to stop.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm too stubborn. Like, I know I can walk this. I'm just going to walk if I have to. And Garrett and the flag guy, I guess, were talking every time I'd go past. And the guy was like, do you think she's going to get off at the next one?
Did Garrett run any part of it?
No.
Okay.
So
Garrett he was just out there supporting you for 7 hours?
7 full hours of car driving.
Wow.
Yeah. Marathon car driving. He did great. He had 10 different signs.
Yeah.
And him and the guy would be like, he'd be like, you know, I think if she's going to stop, it'll probably be the next one. And then he'd get to the next one. And he told me in retrospect, he said there was a spot around mile 21 where I had told him essentially, like, I need you to come sooner, because I was 3 miles that I hadn't seen him. I was used to seeing him every 2. And that 3rd mile that I didn't see him was like, my mentality was banking on that. I'm not looking at this as 26 miles. I'm looking at this as, when am I going to see Garrett next? Yeah. And I was like, I need to see you more frequently. And so after that, he came like a mile after instead of the 2. And he said that was when he told the flag guy that he thought I was going to finish it, was at that like 21 mile mark, because I hadn't been drinking the water, so I didn't need more. And he stopped the car, and I gave him a phone call, and I said, go to the next one. I'll see you at the next one. And he told the guy, I guess, like, she didn't stop. She's not going to stop. She's just going to go to the end.
Through.
But it was fun, and I have never felt so much pain the following days in my life after any sort. 3 days. To the point, like, man, I was fucked up. He got me a massage. Garrett, when I apparently hit the halfway point, he called Hand and Stone and booked me a massage, which is wonderful. Also, here's a patent pending. Anyone who does massages for a living, take notes from this dude. I lay down. I tell him why I'm there. I tell him, like, what I did. And he goes, huh. He goes, you know how the name Marathon came about? And I was like, no. And so I'm laying there. He's rubbing all of me. And he's telling me this story about, like, ancient Greece.
The guy
and,
that
like,
died at the end of it?
This whole story. I'm like, dude, massages should be story time. Don't ask me small talk. Don't make me talk to you. Just tell me cool stories.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah, the one getting massaged should not have to speak.
No.
Yeah.
But
I've
yeah,
fallen asleep
he
during
told me these
massages.
stories. I was like, this is great. And then the same day I was good, I went to an Avs game that night because Garrett had wanted to go. And I figured he did 7 hours of driving for me. I can sit in a chair at an Avs game. That was fine. It was the next day I literally couldn't move my legs, to the point that Garrett was putting me on and taking me off the toilet whenever I'd have to go to the bathroom, because I couldn't.
It's a preview of what life's going to look like in 40 years.
I couldn't do the knee, like I couldn't do the sit motion,
50.
and I couldn't get the get up motion. And so if I had to go to the bathroom, I was screaming his name, and I'd hold on to him around the neck, and he'd lower me down. We had to get into a rhythm of it, because the first time he just let me fucking drop, and I was screaming because it hurt so much. So I was like, you need to go slowly. I've got to have my, so we had a whole rhythm of how to help me pee. I took a sit down shower. Stairs, he would have to go down the stairs in front of me, and I'd have to put all my weight on his shoulders. There was a lot of accommodations being made the 2 days after. I had a giant bag of ice that you get for a party that we had in the basement freezer from a party that we've never used. We put that in a trash bag, and I was just on the couch with that on my legs. Yeah, the next 2 days were freaking horrible.
Yeah.
But I like wouldn't not do it again.
You do another, would you train?
No.
Okay.
I still don't like the idea of short runs.
Yeah.
But I thought it was fun. What I thought came true. I thought it was fun doing like a bigger thing. I took dead last. I was absolute dead last.
Does it actually qualify as finishing if you're after the time?
That's what I wondered. But Tara said yes, because I had asked her that on the Patreon, and she said yes. I am open to the idea that it doesn't. I think I did a lot of walking.
Also, it's arbitrary, right? Like you did a marathon. Who cares if it's within their parameters or not?
I could also call any day that I've hiked 30 miles a marathon. You know, like where is the cutoff? There has to be a line. But
that's a good question of the day.
I do think that if I were to try it again, I could probably get under 7 hours. I think there's things I could tweak.
You said you got 7 hours exactly, right?
On the dot.
Yeah, I'm sure you could improve a minute.
I think I could.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that I would never do one again, because I think at some point I could be curious enough to try to get under 7 hours.
Yeah. I think if you had the marathon goal, you would learn to appreciate the shorter runs a little bit more, because just running to run without any sort of goal, like you have to already be indoctrinated into exercise to have that sort of Stockholm syndrome. But having that bigger goal, at least for me, and I think for a lot of people, it gives it more purpose and is more motivating.
Yeah, like I could see myself wanting to run 5 miles around the block and just to see if my hands would still do that. Or I could see wanting to run 5.5, because this time I only did 5.
Sure.
Like different ways that I could try to get that time down. But I'm not going to go do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I could see myself doing it again.
I think you'd also be into trail running. I know doing like a trail marathon is harder because there's typically a lot more, especially out here, a lot more elevation gain. But like it kind of combines the good parts of backpacking. It's also visually way more interesting.
Yeah.
I personally prefer trail running, even though it is just like objectively harder.
I was gonna say my only fault with that is it's difficult. It's more difficult.
Yeah. It is, but like you make compromises. Like I'll walk the uphills and then run the flats or the downs.
But I had fun. The food vendors were gone by the time I got there, so I didn't get to use the little tags on the bottom of my penny. But they gave me a medal. They said it counted. It was fun in general.
Where is it displayed at your house?
It's in Garrett's office with his trophies.
Nice.
I gave it to him.
Hell yeah.
And then Mims Fireball also ran it with me. She signed up late because she actually runs. And she was like, do you mind if I do it too? And I was like, no, that sounds great. She did it in 5 hours.
Nice.
So she had a very, very good time. And yeah, all around very fun. So I can cross that off the list.
The fact that you're even considering it this short after it means you'll do another one for sure.
I could see doing the same exact one.
Okay.
And like, because then nothing changes in the course apart from me.
Yeah. I also am quite fond of the half marathon distance. I feel like the second half of a marathon is excruciating.
Yeah, I think the half marathon just like felt too achievable.
Yeah.
Like I felt like I could do that.
Yeah.
Maybe not fast, maybe not well, maybe not anywhere but last place, but I could do that. But I think the marathon's long enough where like you get to mile 17 and you start to say, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, there are mind games.
And that's kind of fun.
Yeah, sure. Sweet. Well, good job.
Thank you.
So this is the Triple Crown of cocktails. I feel like we had to have done this, but I did a search through the archives and I wasn't able to dig it up. So I apologize if this is a repeat, but if it's not, that means this is like the most obvious Triple Crown of all time. Mm-hmm. Also, today is December 2nd, which I learned is National Bartender Day. So in honor of the wonderful bartenders in our world.
Oh yeah, never mind. That's just my bad reading. Never mind on that. It snowed in Denver. My allergies are crazy. My first one, espresso martinis. Love them.
Have those always been popular? I feel like I've only seen them emerge in the last few years. Or is this like a Sex and the City thing? Like, where does the popularity of these things come from?
I don't know. I don't think it was like a college drink. I think that's a little like too bougie for a college drink. So it's hard for me to gauge when they came about. But I will say, maybe the older you get, the more tired you get, the more you need the espresso.
Sure. Yeah.
The more appealing it becomes.
The martini espressos are all the rage with the mom group.
Yeah, but it has to be like done right. It needs to be dark and not cloudy. Like when they put the Baileys or whatever in it, where it just looks like a milky brown.
Yeah.
I don't want that.
Yeah. I've never had a full one to myself. Just had a sip of Jenna's, and I'm like, I can get into this.
Yeah.
It's a sophisticated Jägerbaum. My first one, there's definitely going to be some honorable mentions here, but being a Wisconsin boy, I can't not say Old Fashioned.
Yeah.
Specifically the Wisconsin
Those were
Old
so
Fashioned.
good.
Yeah, the Wisconsin Old Fashioned is the shit.
Yeah.
And I miss them. And we're getting deep into Old Fashioned season, which is like the only redeeming quality of winter, in my opinion.
When is Old Fashioned season?
Just when it's cold and sucks. Yeah, just like when you leave work and it's dark and like you can't go do anything fun on a trail and like there's not anything good on TV. That's Old Fashioned season.
Okay.
My next pick, very much not a winter drink in my opinion, but probably the cocktail that I consume the most over the course of a year is a margarita.
Yeah.
And if we want to be particular about it, if I had to pick any margarita, I'm going with a spicy margarita every single time it's on the menu.
Okay.
On the rocks with salt, always. Just like a good margarita always hits the spot.
Yeah.
And like when you go to just one of the hole-in-the-wall Mexican restaurants out here, and they ask you if you want a medium or a large, and you're stupid enough to say a large, and then you're like, I should not be driving home. You don't ever do that with kids in the car. You take that risk with your wife, though.
All you made me think I thought this was going to be an insult on me because you said medium or large, and I thought we were going to make fun of me for trail days again.
Oh, you did get the most gigantic. Yeah, but didn't we determine that was all sugar and no booze?
All sugar and
yeah.
no margarita, and man, my brain hurt.
Yeah.
But yeah, margarita's a good one.
The best.
Okay, this next one came from something I don't like. This makes me an outlier amongst girls around the world, but I don't love an Aperol spritz. I don't like how it tastes, and that's the in drink. And so I have struggled because that's just not the spritz for me. But when I was in Italy, I learned about the Hugo spritz, aka the Saint Germain spritz, and that has prosecco, elderflower liqueur, seltzer, lime, and mint, and it tastes delightful.
Interesting.
It's like a little minty Sprite. It's wonderful, and it doesn't taste anything like the bitterness of an Aperol spritz does. But you kind of look like a dickhead when you're at a bar and you ask for a Hugo spritz, and then the bartender says either "What's that?" or "We don't have Saint Germain."
Yeah, I feel like a good bar has to have Saint Germain. I know elderflower spirits are not.
I asked for it once.
Yeah.
In a place that everyone else was drinking Aperol spritzes, and they said they didn't have Saint Germain, and then I felt like a dickhead, and I haven't tried to order it since.
Yeah.
So.
I was introduced to Aperol spritz with a heavy pouring of Aperol, and now that's the way that I drink it. I think it is better that way. It's a little bit sweeter.
That's the bitter taste, though, isn't it?
So Aperol straight, excuse me, is sweeter. There's another Aperol like liqueur. I'm blanking on it. It'll come to me. But it's also red in color, and I think sometimes they use that, and that one is much more bitter.
Interesting.
Let's see.
Actually, that makes sense because they offered at one place a half and half spritz that was half of the one and half of the other, and I thought I would do that because then it would taste less like an Aperol spritz, and it was worse.
Yeah, Campari.
Yes.
That one is definitely much
like
harder
it.
on the palate.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do all three?
Oh no, I have to do my second one. This one is tougher for me because there's some standard good ones that I could say, but if it's me looking at a menu and I'm going for what is going to catch my attention, I will look for either a martini or a gin drink usually it's one of the two that has lychee. It's
lychee?
a fruit, and I ate a lot of it in Thailand. Lychee. But if you can get like a lychee martini or a drink that has lychee and they actually have the fruit pieces, oh my god, it's delicious. It looks like a little, like, I don't know. It looks like a clementine when peeled, but it just tastes so good. And some places will have lychee martinis or a lychee drink. Typically will be with gin, which I'm indifferent towards. But a lychee drink, I love.
Huh. I don't think I've ever seen this. My last one, which ties together two ingredients, which you said that you're not excited about, is I've recently discovered this via my father, is a Negroni.
Ah.
Which is a popular cocktail. I'd only heard of it, and I had my first one, and I gotta say I'm a fan. It's equal parts gin, Campari, and sweet vermouth. And maybe part of the reason I like it is just because it's all booze. So, you get a nice buzz very quickly. But yeah, it's a very delicious cocktail.
Have you seen this video? How do I make this do it again? Oh god, I'm not Zach.
Another good winter cocktail, I'll say as well.
No, hold on. Just give me a second to figure out how this works. This one, have you seen this video? Refresh. Oh, come on.
I'll do my honorable mentions while you find it.
No, I found it. I just can't make the volume work.
Oh.
Try a different one.
Aperol Spritz was on my list.
What's your drink of choice?
A Negroni.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Magliato.
With
Prosecco in it.
Oh, stunning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually...
Have you never heard that?
No.
Oh,
What is
that was
that?
big over the summer. She's the actress in House of Dragons, and they were doing an interview, and I feel like Negronis, however you say it, got like a little bit of a spike after this because people just like loved this.
What's your
video.
drink of choice?
A Negroni.
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Magliato. With Prosecco in it.
Oh, stunning.
Prosecco.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that was a big video this summer.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Nice. Aperol Spritz was on my list. You took that.
I didn't put it on my list.
Well, you mentioned it.
Yeah, I mentioned not like it.
Paloma. Love grapefruit anything.
Love a Paloma.
Yeah. I was on the fence between Negroni and Paloma. And I know you love this one, Bloody Mary.
Hate. My negative towards a Paloma is I need Tums. If I'm going to be drinking a Paloma, I'm going to get acid reflux.
Is that from the grapefruit?
Yeah. It's highly acidic.
Sweet.
Yeah. Shout out to mojitos. You're always there when nothing else is.
No, this segment has definitely made me crave an old fashioned in the worst way. I mean, honestly, kind of all of them.
Cool.
Where are we? Mailbag.
Listen to the great podcast about the sun protection options and effective sunscreen. My question is, how does DEET or picaridin affect their effectiveness? I know I get up in the morning on the AT, slather on the sunscreen, Blue Lizard per the podcast, and then I almost immediately thereafter lather up Bug Dope. Curiosity. Holiday.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. You should always assume that we don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's an advanced question. But there is an article that is somewhat related to this. I guess it only vaguely answers the question. But this is from skincancer.org, and the author is an MD. And their only remark that is, I guess, somewhat related is to not pick a product that combines the two because they can kind of counteract each other. It's to apply one, let it dry, and then apply the other, which I don't think is necessarily an answer to the question.
No. My brain tends to think sunscreen goes first, if that helps.
Yeah.
If you're someone who is knowledgeable on this stuff and, like, qualified to answer, write to us. Let us know.
Yeah. Also, I didn't know that there were any products that combine those two things, so...
Me neither.
Yeah. Maybe we can talk to Travis about that.
Yeah, it's a smart idea.
Yeah. If you guys want to send us your questions or thoughts, podcast@thetrek.co, or this next segment, which is 5-star review. This one is from Geo924, Daydreaming Between Treks. I'm more of a weekend warrior than a professional backpacker, but I discovered this podcast when I moved to Western North Carolina in 2018, just a few episodes in, and I've been a fan ever since. I work in Parks and Rec, often running equipment, so I use this podcast to make the days fly by when I'm working out in the field, and it always puts me in the best mood and ensures my heart is in the right place on the job. Plus, it inspires my weekends in the backcountry. The banter is hilarious, the guests are informative, and the insight always helps inform my decisions. Not to mention, I've made it my mission to be a trail angel and offer cold drinks and snacks along the AT whenever I'm doing something near a place it intersects. Thank you for the endless hours of engagement and entertainment as someone with 16 years in outdoor industry in Maine, New York, and North Carolina, working on campgrounds and trails and the neighborhood parks that inspire the next generation of adventurers. I cannot stress enough the importance of advocacy that you guys do through your passionate storytelling and outreach in the community. Cheers and happy trails. That was a really nice review.
Yeah, that was nice.
Gio,
Thanks.
thank you so much for that. I'm very appreciative of your listening. And if you guys want to have your review read on this podcast, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us any number of stars, just not 1, 2, 3, or 4. And please send us a screenshot of your review at podcast@thetrek.co, and we'll send you a Backpacker Radio sticker.
Mm-hmm.
Super big thank you to our Chuck Norris Award winners on Patreon. That is Alex and Misty with Navigators Crafting, Andrew, Austin McDaniel, Ben Love, Brad and Blair from 13 Adventures, Brent Stenberg, Brian Alsop,
Fables.
Christopher Marshburn, Coach from Marion Outdoors, Derek Cook, Eric Casper,
The Friendly Ghost.
Eric Hoffman, Jillian Daniels, Greg Knight, Greg McDaniel, Griffin Haywood, You Bring Me a Beer, Haley Buckingham,
Palace.
Liz Seeger, Old Man Murph's Coffee Roasters, OMMCR.com, Paulie's our guy, Patrick Ciancialo, Rebecca Brave, Sawyer Products, Spam, Timothy Hahn,
Solo.
and Tracy Trigger. You can follow us on social media at Backpacker Radio on Instagram and TikTok, at BackpackerPod on X, Facebook.com/back. I don't know why that always throws me off. Facebook.com/Backpacker Radio. You can follow Chaunce.
You can find me on Instagram at Juliana_Chauncey, on YouTube at Juliana Chauncey, and you can get my book, Hiking from Home, a long-distance hiking guide for family and friends, on Amazon.
Appalachian Trials and Pacific Crest Trials are my books. Chaunce and I would both be very appreciative of a 5-star review. We should probably start to talk about our holiday package, the annual thing.
Yeah, let's do that.
It might be ready
Should
by
we
the
just
time.
say we're doing that?
Yeah, we're doing it.
Yeah.
By the time you're listening, this is probably a little bit late. Maybe we'll get the word out in an earlier episode.
Sure.
You know, we are always planning ahead. Follow us on YouTube. It's up
Hi,
to
Internet.
YouTube. Another shout out to if we eclipse our $10,000 donation threshold, Jabba getting his beard shaved live on the podcast will be on YouTube.
It will be on
So
YouTube.
that'll be must-watch
Yes.
internet TV for anyone who is watching. All right, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening, and happy hiking.
Bye.